Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, July 8th, called to order at 6:40 PM. We will down to FY25 Select Board reorg.
I'm going to keep it very simple. Make a motion to not make any changes. No, to leave Jacob Smith as chair of the select board for FY25.
Second.
First of all, do you accept that?
I
No,
guess I don't have any discussion, but
No, you do. In all reality, you do. You've done a fantastic job, but obviously, if it becomes a capacity issue or a bandwidth issue, then let's have that conversation.
well, I appreciate it. I'm flattered, and if either of you ever change that, even mid-year, I'm not, let's bring it up. Let's have a discussion. If you want to take the reins, no worries at all. But I also appreciate that you've all taken, on different tasks, and we've divvied up the work. So if it is a capacity issue or anything, you've been responsive to that, piece by piece. And if it is overall, I'll let you all know. So if that's what you both would prefer, I will continue.
I think as our chemistry have formed during my first year here, I think it works well this way, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
All right, well, no other discussion appearing on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I accept, I guess.
Aye,
All right,
aye,
thank you,
aye.
gentlemen. We'll continue. And then moving into FY25 Select Board Liaison Assignments. In reading this over quickly, this does not include those positions that we've already kind of voted on in prior meeting,
You're talking about your representatives?
like for COG and stuff like that, right? That's not
Correct.
included
This
here,
is
right?
just the department liaisons.
It's not like the full scope of what each of us is
Correct.
covering. It's just
But I can add
liaisons.
that.
Well, I'm just thinking about it in terms of distribution. Were there any we missed? I know we've talked about this, and sometimes there's one or two out there that we need to revisit or haven't kind of put on the list or updated, or any changes that any of you want, or are you good with it the way it is?
I'm fine with it the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no proposed changes. Unless, we can, you said, get that thorough list to, just for record-keeping sake at our next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. I'll just kind of make sure, because if I know at least some of us will keep this and just kind of file it and have it available so we know what ours are, and so having those in
It
there
usually
just make
goes
it
on
more
my
complete.
desktop.
I was just going to say, it's like our quick reference, like who is it mine, or
Yeah.
as to take the lead, obviously, if there's issues or department heads need something, or there's something that one of us wants to handle, we're very flexible about it, so no issues there. It sounds like otherwise we'll keep it as is.
Okay.
Okay?
I'll reach
Do you need a
tomorrow.
motion for that, sir, or no?
I don't think so,
Take
no.
no action,
That's
right?
our, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll maintain as is.
Okay. We'll distribute.
Alrighty. We're about 1 minute away from the public hearing for the Eversource and Verizon petition for a joint pole at River Road. So if you want to bring in Eversource, who's remote, and then we'll call it here in a moment.
Is there anybody from Eversource in the room? Nope. But you're here for the hearing? Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Welcome. Can you hear us? All right, hang on. We can't hear you yet.
opposite of the problem we had with our existing
They're working on it now, so just a moment. We can see you, so we do have video. We're going to try to reconnect you and see if it fixes the audio issue. I can see you're talking, but I can't understand it. All right, it doesn't seem like we're able to get the audio back on that connection.
Okay.
Oh, wait, hang
Can
on.
you-
I think we got
hear
you
me
now. Yeah,
Fantastic.
all right. Welcome. All right, well, let me call the public hearing regarding the Eversource and Verizon petition for a joint poll at River Road to order at 6:48 p.m. Welcome, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello board members. My name is NMBL. I am an engineer for Leidos. We are a engineering contractor for Eversource. Uh, First off, I would like to say thank you for allowing me to attend this virtually. I really appreciate it. I realized, we had some issues to start out, but I hope we can make it the whole way through. um,
So we have the petition here for locating of pole, wire, cable fixtures and necessary, etc., along public way in the area of number 27 and 57 River Road in Erving. And the purpose is the new pole sets are part of Eversource's reconductor project that's planned to improve reliability and protection in the area. And we have copies of the petition and plan available here on site if needed for anyone. And then is it 2 or 3? I know there was some discussion back and forth. It's 3 poles?
It's 3.
It's 3 new poles?
that is correct. Yes, 3 new poles.
Okay. So initially, I know that our teams have looked at this, so the highway superintendent and the water wastewater superintendent, if you gentlemen want to come up and give us any feedback on concerns or not with proposed placements.
David, Glenn McCrory, Highway Superintendent, how are you? So, I don't have any concerns of locations where these are, but there was a pole set located down at 21 River Road also, but it's not on here anymore. Is that part of this, or has that one been eliminated?
21 River Road. So I will say that this project, or these 3 new installs, are part of a larger project that's going to involve multiple pole replacements along River Road and Gunn Street. The majority, or every single one of the other poles will be replaced in place. If there is a there should not have been a brand new pole placed at 21. It should just have been 2 new pole locations near 57 and 1 slight relocation of a pole 22/6 near 27 River Road. Unless, of course, do you have any evidence otherwise? Is there another new pole?
So I had spoke with Eversource probably about a month or so ago when the tree company came around knocking on doors about what was going to happen if they had any issues with them. So I'd asked him about that pole set, and he said it was a new one, and it's only about 20 feet away from an existing one.
Got it. Let me just confirm real quick. This may have been part of a separate project. If it was, unless there may have been an error in exactly where the pole. I believe actually, you know what?
Because
Looking
it's
at some of
not
my
far
plans.
from the O'Leary property where there's one being set at 22/6. It's not far from that.
Right. Do you happen to know the poll number in particular?
I don't know.
Okay. My only guess here, I would probably need confirmation of exactly what the poll number is, but it may be 20. It may be 22/6 that it might be. There may have been an error in our maps that we've sent you. Instead of 27 River Road, it might be the one at 21 River Road. I apologize, though. I'm not aware of this new
That's
pole
okay.
being set. Yeah, but for pole 22/6 that we were petitioning for tonight, that was proposed to be relocated 20 feet.
So it may be that one at 21 River Road then. Okay.
It may. I will certainly get someone out to confirm that, though.
So,
That creates a problem.
so yeah,
Right.
exactly. Excuse me. So if I'm following this, you're saying that marker that you see on the field is like on our inset drawing further kind of southwest of pole 22.5,
Correct.
not between 22.5 and 22.7
Correct.
as it's shown here.
Yep.
And if I'm following what you're saying is that you believe that may be where 22.6 proposed is supposed to be, not where it's shown?
It
Maybe.
is- it is possible. I truly don't have a specific answer for you. The only other possibility I can imagine is if that pole was set as part of a different project.
Jake, give me like a few minutes. I can run down and get a poll number. Because otherwise it's going to create a mess with the rest of this, right?
Well, if it's not where it's shown here, then
Yeah,
I'm not
regardless.
sure the abutters list needs to be confirmed again and et cetera, so we need to, postpone or hold it, a new hearing when we had the appropriate information for the 22.6 poll. The other two, assuming there's no concerns about where 22.16M1, 22B17S are proposed, or any discrepancies that were noted, then we could continue with those two tonight. But if I'm missing anything, we would need to confirm it. We have even notified the right and kind of done all the right steps to have the hearing about the poll if 22.6's proposed location is different than shown. So I think we'd have to hold off on that one.
Yeah, we're just
You know,
separate.
discussing it any
separate them
further
out.
and just bring it back at a future, in a future public hearing.
Understood.
If you do that, could you choose a date and time and put it as part of a vote tonight? Just so that there's a specific date and time for that hearing?
Yes, we could, for sure. Now, if we wanted to recess it after we talk about the other two polls, potentially, and you want to confirm enough to come back, and if there's information that he could gather and get to you tonight to be able to confirm if or if not that is the right location, we could recess, you know, for a set period of time and come back to it tonight. But that's only if there's a likelihood. I don't want to have people waiting, you know, for a long period of time to come back and find out that we can't proceed. So that'd only be if there's something that he, you know, that the highway superintendent could identify for you that would tell you for sure that yes or no, the proposal is correct in front of us. And I don't know what your take is on that.
I don't want to keep people waiting here if needed. It's understandable to have it, you know, you can delay it to a later date. But if you would like to discuss the other two polls, I'm open to that.
If we have anyone here and we have them in front of us, I would want to address them while we're here, since we're here for those, you know, and get those out of the way if there's anything needed. And then we can reschedule the other one. Before we leave the other one, since it's the one in question, how much time would you need with Eversource to go out and field verify and, you know, come back to us with the right information to reschedule this?
Only about a week.
And then I need 7 days to notify abutters.
7 to notify, okay, that's what I thought. So, 22nd feels a little tight, but
I mean, if you give them a deadline of this Friday, we can notify on Monday
can
the
you
15th.
notify on the 15th and we're meeting on 22nd? Is sufficient?
Yep.
All right, can we have that by the 12th? Is that reasonable?
Most
By
certainly.
Friday? Okay. All right, then we will schedule to have a public hearing at 6:45 on July 22nd regarding the location of proposed pole
22/6.
Yes, P226, which is currently referenced in the vicinity of 27 River Road. But we will get the confirmed correct location and post accordingly once we have that for the July 22nd, 6:45 public hearing.
Okay.
So that's for 22/6. Well, the other, yes, sir.
Motion?
To schedule the hearing? Yes.
Thank you.
Move that we schedule a poll hearing regarding proposed poll 22/6 on River Road at 6:45 PM on July 22nd, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As for the other two, proposed 22B17S and P2216M1, anything from you, Glenn, on those two?
No concerns.
No concerns? Pete?
I have no concerns. We marked out actually where the line was. I don't know when they're going out there. But as long as they're off the edge of the road, all our structures are under the roadway.
At least on the proposed print, it looks like they're well outside the paved, I'm assuming that's paved surface? Yeah, paved. So that should be okay.
Should be, yep.
You do have an abutter here also.
Thank you. Anything, questions or concerns the board had regarding? Any abutters of the two poles referenced in the vicinity of 57, 58 River Road who had any questions or concerns? Please come on up if you do. Why don't you come on up if you'd introduce yourself, just your name and,
Brian Kronecki at 57 River Road. Well, I know my mailbox is by the pole. I mean, that's not that big of a deal. I don't know if I would need to take that out, or they do, or relocate it. Then, is all this underground? Like, is there gonna be digging on my property, or?
so you're at
It's-
57.
57, correct? Yeah. Go ahead.
It is all overhead. The only digging that would be required is for the digging of the pole to set the pole.
Okay.
And you would not have to move your mailbox or anything like that. Eversource, the new pole for on that property is going to be replaced in place.
It looks like that's actually beyond your property, I think. If I'm following the PL line being the property lot line,
It's supposed to be.
you know, or estimated, it looks like that pole is actually probably in the state or town layout for River Road or French King Highway. I'm not sure where that delineation would be, but it's a new pole, kind of. You have that print in front of you, the
Yes, I
documents?
do,
Yeah.
yep.
So that new kind of circle with the X in it there, P22
Yeah.
over B17S, kind of across from Public Works Boulevard.
That's where the pole,
That's the new pole
Oh,
would
okay.
be going, yep.
all right.
And then there's no changes to P22 over 16M, which is right in front of your property there, I don't believe.
Yeah, all right.
So the other new pole's across from your property, and
And so that whole like bank would be cleared? Because that would be actually nice.
I don't know how much of that.
I can't say how much of that would be cleared. Eversource will do some tree trimming for the overhead lines. As for ground cover, I can't say how much of that's going to be cleared.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So just to have
We get
confirmation.
the field team out there already, huh?
Yeah, just had confirmation that it is pole 22 over 6 that is down by 21 River Road. It's what's written on the stake that's in the ground for the pole location.
Is there a marker at the property that was noted on the plan?
27.
27?
But you're asking a lot right now.
Wow. You seem to have boots on the ground.
I can't confirm that.
No,
But
that's
I
okay.
can confirm that the pole to be located
Yep,
is at the 21 River Road property that's labeled 22/6.
okay. Well, that's enough to know that what was noted here is not correct, so.
Okay.
Or it's at least confusing. So
And for the next
we
meeting.
will hold that for the hearing it on the 22nd as noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns from the audience related to the two poles in the vicinity of 5758?
I just want to be clear that this is only the placement of the two new. You were saying replace in place. Are we replacing the existing poles with taller as well? I just want to make sure I get the full scope of what's happening.
Yes, that's correct. On top of these two new poles, maybe about 70% of the poles down River Road will be replaced with taller poles.
Okay.
Can I ask
Yes, sir.
how that relates to the removal of double poles, knowing that we already have several double poles that have remained for years?
Love to hear that answer.
Yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We have, so, of the double poles that you've sent images of us to me earlier, some of those still have communications attachments, and because of that, we cannot remove the old poles until those until those communications attachments are transferred over to the new ones. We do have a internal process to notify those attachers. So we're in the process of reaching back out to them to make sure that they get these transferred over as soon as possible. And then as for the ones without any communications wires on them, I've relayed to Eversource, and they are having their operations team take a look and see what they can do to get those double poles out of the ground as soon as possible.
Okay.
Can we get,
Regarding, oh, so sorry.
once you hear back, can we get a firm date on when those will be moved by? The ones that can be already moved?
Most certainly.
Well,
And-
yeah, I was going to go.
And once, and when the other, communications, other people on the existing poles that need to be removed have been notified, so we can also follow up?
Yes, most certainly.
Is that where you were going?
Well, yeah, I was going to go with getting dates on when we get confirmation. I'm assuming it's Comcast for the
usually Comcast,
communications, because Verizon's part of this petition, so I'm hoping that they're not also somebody we're waiting on. Yeah, I would just like confirmation that, A, they've responded, and there's a date set for those as well.
Of course. I will follow up, most likely by the 12th. We have a more solid answer for you, a more set date on when we can get those moved over and these poles removed.
Okay.
Okay. Can you confirm, or could you confirm then if it's just Verizon, just Comcast, or if it's also Verizon or anyone else that needs to move for those to be removed?
It is likely two companies. I can't exactly say which one. Yeah, we do have an internal system, but I'm so sorry.
All good.
But yeah,
Okay.
I
Just
can't
to-
confirm right now.
That's fine. Just to the point that we're considering the request from Verizon and Eversource jointly, so if Verizon has things sitting on poles that are holding up other processes, obviously we'd like to know that before we are, so we can move that along.
Of course.
Did that
Yeah.
sufficiently
Yep.
answer your question? Okay. Any other? Did you have any other?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have concerns with the placement of the new poles. If the abutters don't have concerns with it, I'm fine with moving forward with it.
And is the 2216 M1 is, so the lines are right now directly between 17S and 16M, is that right? And this will just be bringing them across or stay on the same side as 17S to the new pole and then crossing? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And then what about the new 22 B17S? Is it currently just straight from B18 to the next pole on French King Highway?
So the new proposed E17S is going to be a support pole for the one between B18 and new proposed pole 16M1. The idea is to back up and just improve the integrity of the loading on the pole. There's a few separate wires going in different directions there, so it's used to support.
But it does indicate on the drawing, if I understand it correctly, that there are overhead lines connecting 22B17S to 22B17S. So they're both. Oh, so
That is-
that's the new?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry,
There
I
isn't.
think I got it now.
Okay.
So maybe I was missing that when I was reading it the first time. B17S is moving to a new location?
No.
No.
There'll be two.
B17S is a brand new pole. The solid circle B17S is staying where it is.
Okay.
I believe that's a typo. There should not be a S at the end of the solid circle B17 pole.
Okay, that's what I just noted, was that they're the same pole, but they're not. They should be distinctly
The
different
S,
poles.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
The S
That's-
is just a support.
It's the support of what should be non-S, so
Yes.
we assume the existing
So
solid
on-
would be the primary, and then this is the support?
Correct. Just on your support pole,
Got
the
it.
new one, no hot lines, no communications, strictly just support with an anchor?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
The
Okay,
overhead
thank
wire
you.
is going
Yeah.
to
That's what I was missing.
Yeah. Yeah, just,
I was missing that nuance. that
it's
that's
just
what it
one
was.
guy
It's
wire
a guide
going
wire
across
pole.
with,
Yeah, okay,
with an
got it.
anchor into the ground.
Okay, got it. Got it. All right. That makes a lot more sense to me. Thank you. Okay. Any other? Okay. With that, then I move we close the public hearing regarding the Eversource and Verizon petition for joint poles on River Road at 7:12 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then are we ready to make any order tonight, or do we? Actually, is this? We should probably wait to order it all at the same time, since, or can
You
we
could-
just order only part of what is in
Yeah.
the? Okay.
Yeah,
You can order it partially, right?
it refers to the petition that was
Right.
filed, but what you order is the result of your
Of the meeting, the hearing.
deliberation today. So we can strike the proposed poll for 27 River Road.
What is the pleasure of the board?
I'm fine with moving forward with it, just with the two that we've discussed this evening.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Are the
computers are-
construction conditions acceptable?
Say that one more time, Brian?
Bullets 1 through 9, the construction conditions on the draft order.
Double check them just because you called them out.
I appreciate it.
Only because you had mentioned it, Pete. The utilities underground, you said they're under the pavement, correct? Anything that we have is under the road surface? And the new pole in front of 58, this isn't to scale, so it's hard for me to be able to justify it, but is it at least 5 feet off the roadway? Because I want to make sure if it's 3 feet off the roadway and our utilities are 1 foot off the road, or within the roadway, we're now out of compliance with what we certified.
Right, fair enough.
Yes, the land edge of pavement distance is 5 feet from the edge of the road.
And these are all going to be marked with dig safe beforehand, and you'll site confirm, right? Anything before
Yes.
they? Yep, okay. Did you have any concerns specifically, or just wanted to make sure we were good with it?
Just want to make sure.
Okay. Any other?
Not at this time. I was just looking for, maybe I'm missing it. Just trying to, I thought I had some recommended language. And it's okay. We need to modify that. Do you need all that in the language to modify
No, I
it?
think if you ordered it, to issue the order dated, or numbered 2024-2 as amended, I think it's sufficient.
Amend it first.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it needs to be amended before we make any motion then.
Or you can amend it in your motion. Whichever you
Removing.
would prefer.
Yeah. All right. I will make a motion to approve the order for joint or identical pole locations, order number 2024-02, with the amendment of striking River Road, install one new pole and anchor 22/6 near 27 River Road.
I'll second.
You need anything else, Brian?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. We'll plan to see you or Representative back, I assume, on the 22nd, and we'll have that back information to us by Friday, this Friday.
Well, certainly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience on timing tonight. With that, we'll move on to our joint meeting. So call to order joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee at 7:18 PM. Come on up.
Unfortunately, we don't have a quorum.
Okay. Looks like we don't have a quorum of either.
Correct.
Got it, okay. I knew we were gonna not have one, but,
Text one of the members to see if they'd be joining us, but I haven't heard anything back yet.
okay. If you hear that, please let me know.
Scott, I'm disappointed in you. That motion took far too long.
Yeah.
Or not long enough to get an answer. So we'll have a discussion, we'll have some topics, and if Capital or Finance wants to weigh in, obviously, or just give their thoughts, please do, but it's not a joint meeting, and I was thinking with some of this stuff, because there's some proposals around capital to be discussed tonight, that we can hear them, and we may want to, myself or you as members, let the chair know and see if he wants to schedule a meeting for that group to discuss those and give us feedback, or if they'd like us to schedule another joint meeting in the future. So we'll still jump into those. So let's see where to start. Why don't we start with discussion regarding the Mass Trails Grant Award? So we did receive the Mass Trails Grant Award notice for the feasibility study for the trail. And so it's a discussion about the capacity, ability, and interest in continuing and accepting that or not, given that we do not have a planner. And obviously when we did put this forth, we did, and there's some some work or in-kind expected to receive this grant. So from our last discussion, I think you were looking into what support might be available from the FERCog team and
Correct.
others on this project, given not having a planner at this time.
Correct.
Do you want to give us an update on that?
Yes, and I have included the correspondence in your packets. The planning department is interested in supporting the town on this project if you all decide to proceed. They reviewed the scope of work that had been put in with the application, that discussed the in-kind services our planning department would have provided. They can provide most, if not all, of that oversight work. They've sort of itemized out what those services would look like discreetly. They do believe it would take about 100 hours. We had estimated 96, so not far off. Their cost is approximately $8,500. They do indicate that some staff time may be able to be absorbed within the FRCOG, but they could not absorb all of that within the FRCOG. And they're happy to discuss that further if there was interest in proceeding.
Meaning, meaning what in terms of hours they couldn't absorb or could absorb?
So the maximum cost to the town, if we chose to engage, would be the $8,500 to cover the full 100 hours.
Okay.
They would be happy to work with us to talk about what potentially they could absorb within the FRCOG.
Without
To bring
the
that down.
8,500? Okay,
Right.
or
But-
to reduce that?
But there would
Gotcha.
still be a cost.
Understood, okay.
I know I've been having a conversation with Selectman Bastrash in previous weeks, and I think he mentioned at the last meeting, one source, there had been a question about the source if you all decided to go forward. The planning department budget right now is not being touched. So we have the consulting line item, and we do have wages at this point that would be available to repurpose if that was the wish of the town.
Do you recall what is our consulting line item, 10,000?
Correct.
And so is the $4,500 in addition to the in-kind, or that is?
That $4,500 was a cash contribution, and that was towards the engineering services.
Okay, so that's in
So
addition
that
to?
remains.
That does remain.
So then it would be, if it were to go in, it would be not to exceed 13,000.
Correct.
And that 4,500 would come from?
I would take that from the planning department.
The discussion that really is if, well, first of all, do we want to move forward with it? And if we do, the funding source is, that funding source is available until such time we find a staff member to fill that position.
Correct.
And, you know, you could calculate what the monthly allocation would have been and figure out if we would have, you know, how long would we go before we would max out for the $3,000 to make sure that we could cover the up to 13 if we were to use the entire 10,000 for the consulting.
Oh, I got you.
So we would have a shortfall of 3,000, which you could repurpose from the salary line item that is currently not being used. And at the rate that we were advertising in the placeholder, it's not a long time before we get over $3,000.
Correct.
The salary line item would eat that up pretty quickly in July.
Right.
The question for me is, do we want to use the $10,000 in the consulting line item to use FRCOG as our consultant on this project if it's something we want to move forward with?
I think it's an appropriate use of the money. They would be acting on our behalf, filling in as a consultant, if you would.
Yeah. And to be clear, I think we talked about it very briefly the last time because we wanted to wait until we had everybody here, but this is strictly for the engineering and the feasibility
Of a feasibility.
of a
Yep.
feasibility study, and it is not to then go forward and incur any additional costs going forward. Our hope is to dovetail this with Mass DOT and say, we've done the feasibility, we believe it is feasible, here's the potential probable cost and everything that goes with it. It's yours if you want to fold it into your Route 2 project that's, you know, happening and create a safe pedestrian / bike, you know, walkway. We won't get one in the town of Erving on Route 2. It's just not, it's been talked about for decades. There's just not the room for it. With the ledge and the river, we're capped. So, I mean, I'm in favor of going forward with it. I think only because we have the capacity with that line item that we're not able to use. I did talk with Brian and I said, with the FRCOG offering to do that for a fee, what is the amount of lift from his office, knowing that he would have some that he would be okay with doing. And we went round and round with this for a little bit, because I was trying to minimize that to next to nothing. I wanted to make sure that it was as close to zero as we could get. And regardless of whether or not Mariah was here and we were doing this or not, the lift, according to him, would be the same. It would be quarterly payments would come through to, check those, funnel those through, and there was a potential for 2 or 3 meetings at max to ensure that things were going as according to plan over the, November to, or May to November, something like that.
November to May.
Had it backwards, thank you. Yeah, to make sure we have it done before the end of the fiscal year.
Correct.
So over that time period of, a few months, a couple of meetings, and just processing bills as he already does anyways. So not a heavy lift. So I was leaning more on what his stance would be of whether or not it would put a burden on his office, whether or not we would go forward. We've been very clear that as we're short-staffed, if we're just taking on projects, we have to ensure that we have the bandwidth. And we wouldn't, just because we want to do it, if we don't have the bandwidth to do it, we can easily say no and move on and thank the state for the award, but at this time, things have changed. So I deferred to him, and we went back and forth a little bit, and he assured me that with the FERCog's assistance and their ability to do all of the other pieces, that the finite number of pieces left are not a heavy lift at all and able to be done without burden. So just wanted to share that was our conversation.
So I'm just gonna, Capital didn't support this then, we're not here to talk about it now.
Right.
The cost has now gone up considerably for what the town's cost is gonna be. I know it's still just $13,000, but that's $13,000. I said it before, I still question what the benefit to Erving is that this project brings. I hear a lot about it'll benefit MDOT down the road, it'll, a portion of the trail isn't even in Erving. If I recall all the details correctly, Brian, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know how invested our staff is in projects. I don't know if I honestly believe that there won't be a lift to Brian's office. I think there will be. I think we can say we hope there isn't, but I think there will be. I think the town has a lot of other more pressing projects that have come up. We've got potentially a multi-million-dollar repair at the school for roofs and HVAC and things like that. And I just don't see how, I don't see our audience filled with supporters of this project. I think it's a great idea. I just don't necessarily see how this positively benefits our residents. And moving forward with the feasibility study is one thing, but then, so we're gonna pay $13,000 to potentially just shelve a feasibility study? That to me doesn't make sense. And we've had other projects where we've had to do things like that, and then we have to go back and say, can we throw some more money at you because now we need this study updated because it's sat for a year and a half or it's sat for however long. And so I'm just afraid that that is what this is gonna turn into.
Okay. Well, to answer one of your questions, benefit for our residents would be a connection for a walking path, a jogging path, a bike path that would connect Farley and beyond to Erving Center. I envision it as a thing where we have the concert in the park series, and it would be a decent night to hop on a bike and go down the trail, to set up a chair, listen to a concert, and then hop on back and have a good evening and burn a few calories in the process. There could be all kinds of exercise opportunities there for residents on both sides of the connector. Whether or not people take advantage of that would remain to be seen, but you do have a valid concern. What is the real quantitative value to our residents? And I don't know if I could put a number on it, The qualitative value I can speak to a little bit.
I guess my concern is I hear what you're saying and I agree with you, but is that benefit actually going to be realized if all we're doing is a feasibility study to then turn around and shelve it for when MassDOT moves forward with their aspect of this project? And what's not to say they then don't decide that this isn't what the area they want to go? Because it sounds like our intent is to dovetail those two things together. So if that dovetailing doesn't work, then we've done research on a feasibility study that may not actually be the project that comes to fruition. And I know that happens, but I'm trying to think big picture and everything else that we have coming our way with capital. That I know this is a small project in the scope of what we do, but it's still a project that takes bandwidth and funds.
Well, what has been MassDOT's appetite for this type of project? You call it complete streets or at their level or whatever. Do they have a desire to create additional travel options through this area? Have they expressed that, or?
That's part of their process when they go through and they've realized they hit a roadblock that they cannot do it on this side of the river.
But to that point, you've now seen where the shoulders on the repaved section in Erving side all now accommodate bikes until you hit the bypass. In theory, I think they meant to include the bypass, but once you include the bypass, where do you go? You're now back in the travel lane. So you now have bicyclists, pedestrians in the travel lane for a 3-mile stretch until you hit Erving Center. That is the challenge. And to the earlier comment that you made, Selectman Basarash, the layout through Farley and along the river is so narrow. There really is very limited constraints. They're trying to at least achieve an even shoulder so that when a motorist is disabled on the side of the road or there's a traffic stop, that can be done so safely. So they're trying to achieve like a 4-foot shoulder on the side, but I don't know how much they can truly achieve that in all of the locations. It's pretty tight.
So I guess then my question, and now leaning back into Deb's argument, is if they have that much of an appetite and they have a budget much bigger than ours, why aren't they funding the study?
I think the reason that this opportunity was pursued, there's a lot of nuanced challenges to this project. It crosses town lines. It involves, I think, at least 2 state agencies that own land. It owns some private old land that goes with the old county layout that is the former Blue Heron roadway. And then it involves MassDOT. So starting to explore all of those complexities, I think you need all of those stakeholders at the table, and MassDOT right now is fully engaged on the Route 2 side of this project. Getting DCR to the table, getting Mass Wildlife to the table, as they will through this process, DCR funding this, makes them an engaged stakeholder. I think that was part of the leverage that we were trying to realize. If they were part of the conversation and they could help troubleshoot there's legislative issues with land that's under certain jurisdictions. If all of those things can be worked out through this feasibility process, it may make this project actually viable. If it's just one entity trying to leverage a project onto others and they don't come to the table, it may not be as viable. To your earlier point, it's just a feasibility study. There is a chance that the feasibility will determine that it is not feasible. So that's why you do this work, and it could look like a sunk cost that doesn't garner a return. I think the return is knowing whether or not we can do this.
Have we, did you start to say something? I'm
No,
sorry. Oh.
no.
Have we actually asked them if they have any funding to put towards this stage?
MassDOT? I did not, because at this point, you typically cannot match a state grant with a state grant. The match usually has to come from a local appropriation or federal or something else. You usually cannot match the same sources.
So,
Or the in-kind, any of it?
Correct.
one additional question for you then is, do you foresee our planner position being filled before August?
No.
we have money earmarked for that department that would not affect other potential needs elsewhere.
Correct.
So, if
There's a lot of needs, though.
Oh, there's,
So I mean, yes, but.
right, but transferring that money to another department or another need would require action beyond us, would it not?
Potentially.
Potentially, yes. And I don't know of, right, any, I
Right.
don't think anybody does of any small need where that would be appropriate, and we could do something with it differently,
yeah.
to be fair.
Just for the audience at home that don't see our audience, I do want to call into question one of your comments that you said earlier. You said you don't see anybody here that's in support of it. I don't see anybody here that's not in support of it.
Fair point.
And actually, we had a couple hands that just went up that they're in support of it. So
Okay.
I would, it's kind of a misnomer to say that there's nobody here in support of it unless we did a poll and asked everybody. And so just wanted to be very clear with that.
I think to that point, we don't have firm numbers in terms of how many residents are in favor of this.
Yeah, we haven't done any of that.
It's all been a hypothetical project. It's mostly been concept. Anecdotally, we've had reports mostly from residents in the Farley neighborhood expressing support for the exploration of connections to the rest of the town. But can I measure that to an exact level of support throughout town? That it's a fair question. We don't have that level.
Just to clarify, Scott, this is actually then the first night that I've seen any residents say that they were in support of this. So that's where I was coming from with that statement.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that we do have some that are.
Question, come on up, or comment?
So, actually did come to the meeting tonight because it was on the agenda. But I'm wearing two hats. One is a recreation commissioner. We've been doing the Concert in the Park series. There is a lot of people that use the bridge and go into that part of the DCR forest, okay? And they hike, they bring their dogs, they bike, they do whatever. But they can't go any farther because there's, the road and the other issues. So the concept that you could connect that whole area for, so you could end up, you can go from Farley to Riverfront and back as a recreational experience is exciting. I also think that it helps us bring more people into town that, like Jim said, they might be in Farley and then come to the concert series, or they might want to take a nice leisurely hike and then end up in the downtown center, maybe visit some of our businesses there for whatever, and then hike back. It is just a feasibility study. I do understand your concerns about that, but often that's the first step before you can get anywhere with anything for the grants and for state money. I do know that the state is in a big push to encourage other modes of transportation, hence why the bike lanes have gone up and all of that. So I think that there's support at the state level for future work, maybe through Mass DOT. That's not us. It is just a feasibility study, but I am in support in making it work because I think it ticks one of our goals in our open space from long ago, which is to create more recreational opportunities to come into Erving, even though most of it's on the Wendell side. But it's just, you're just crossing a river. Also, part of me wonders if we had more activity down there and interest that when it comes time to replace that bridge, that we might not be able to use that as some leverage for some funding from the state.
That's a fair point. That I hadn't thought of that. That is a municipal bridge.
I went to catch you before you stepped away. That's okay. Did, again, I don't go to rec meetings all the time or anything. Is that something that's been discussed or on the roadmap or in the master plan, or kind of something that rec's looking at? Or is this just something, a hearing it, that you're giving feedback tonight?
We have talked about the potential for the grant connecting the trails. It's been on our radar. We knew that the grant was put in, we knew it was awarded. So, and I believe Mario might even come to one of our meetings way back when we talked about it. So it's not like it wasn't, we haven't discussed it at a rec meeting. It's been part of a whole big picture on what, would be for the future. But I don't want to speak for the rec commission as a whole. I'm just saying as a recreational commission member, we do want to utilize that park more. And I think that is an option that will happen if this moves forward.
Makes me want to ask if rec could be able to help fund it.
Well, I don't.
Something that we may
yeah.
want to ask.
I don't think that it's an unreasonable request to ask Recreation if they would be willing to fund some of it. We could certainly have a discussion about it.
Right.
We did put some money aside for things like that, so.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what everybody else, what your thoughts are, but that's more of where the focus of the result will be,
No, I
is
think
around that.
Jackie's comments about visiting downtown businesses, if I'm burning those calories, I might be able to afford a stop to the bagel shop or an ice cream or a sandwich or something.
Or maybe an ice cream at the
You
I
chocolate
don't know if you'll
shop.
want to finish it before you take the hike back, but
You had me at food.
Yeah. I just think it might spurn some more ecotourism, I think that's the word that you want to use.
It
that,
is
you know,
now.
So,
I said it is now.
yeah. Is there anything else?
no, if you could bring that back to the rec
Yeah, I'll bring it back.
commission, that'd be a good
We meet
question.
again later this month, so I'll definitely bring it back to
Assuming we
that.
don't decide not to
Yeah.
tonight, then
Yeah.
please. Wait, come on up.
Mark Blatchley, and I'm a resident of Farley, and I've been a cyclist for quite a long time. Not so much currently, but in the past a lot. There are an awful lot of people biking on Route 2, and I'm very much concerned about the safety of the section from Farley to downtown. We've got 3 bike shops that are active and are doing well in Greenfield that have regular tours and rides that they schedule every week, and I would just suggest that it's a strong possibility that we'd get more use, and we'd get more use into Erving. And I see cyclists all the time on Route 2, although I've never done the bypass. I've always taken Old State Road to go around. But going through that old road would be a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Thank you. I mean, the other question is, when do they want a response by? Do they have a?
They haven't asked me why we haven't returned the signed contract yet. I assume they're looking for a response soon. So if we need more time to talk amongst committees, I can tell them that we need another few weeks. The project, according to our timeline, was not slated to start until November anyhow, so we have a little time. But they were very clear with me, June 30 is a firm, there are no extensions. So there is no moving this into another fiscal year. So any time that we don't take advantage of, if you decide to proceed, the timeline does not get any more breathing room, so.
What do we need to get completed between now and November when it's scheduled to start?
We need to sign the contract with them if you were to accept and get the state certified. We can't even start assigning contracts or doing any of that work until we have a countersigned agreement between us and DCR. So once that's achieved, then we can deal with contracting with the engineers and with FCOG if that's how you wanted to proceed.
If we wait until Rec has had a chance to talk and get back to us, will that give us enough time between now and November?
I think you have enough time to get the work done. Both the engineering firm is ready and willing to do the work if you want to, and FCOG is waiting to know whether or not you want to engage them. So we have both potential partners sort of on standby. They know that it's not a decision one way or the other. They've just stated their interests. So I think you're good there. I think it's just a matter of making sure that the state doesn't get concerned if we haven't responded, if you are looking to proceed. So we should just make sure that we keep communicating with them.
That was, my recommendation would be that we not decide tonight. We'll put it off until we can hear back from Rec, and if you would be so kind in the meantime to say, we're still trying to
Okay?
arrange for the how and where the funding's coming from on our end. Not that it's monumental, but it is up against a lot of other high priorities, so
Understood. Okay.
still trying to figure out how to fit it in.
Other thoughts or
Well,
concerns?
yeah, my question is just that, is the hesitancy just the financial piece of it, or is it in principle the project itself? And time won't change the principle of the project itself. If it's contingent on a funding source and we're looking for alternative other than depleting that consulting line item and utilization of some of the salary that has going to go unused that started a week ago, if that's the concern, then waiting for REC makes sense, and we can see if there's even a portion, of theirs or any other department that may have something that tangentially lines up with this, that they say, I could throw in $500 towards that 4,500, or, and they could hold their meetings and come back. If that's the piece, then it absolutely makes sense to hold off until those meetings throughout the month of July happen, or maybe say first week in August, and then we notify them that on principle, we support it and we want to do it. We just have to really be cognizant of where the funding is coming from, and ensuring that we can fund it appropriately. So it's just more about the messaging to the state of why we're delaying. If we're delaying because we're at odds of whether or not we still support it, that's a different message. And I want to be very clear with them what message we're sending. I mean, I've said from the get-go, I'm in support of it. I think we have the funding for it. I don't know of any other line item that Brian would come up with as our quasi-planning department liaison. Yeah. There's nothing else that we don't have anything earmarked that would come out of that line item yet that I know of. This would be it for that 10,000 line
I see
item
what
for
you're
hiring a consulting fee or firm. And so utilization of that actually creeps into the $4,500 and leaves us with about $3,000 that we would have to utilize. We would surpass that by the end of July.
Well, that's why I was asking if he would foresee that position being filled by the end of this month, or even the end of the following month. And if that were the case, my recommendation would be to take only as much as needed out of the consulting line item, and the
realize
rest
more than-
from the unused wages, so that should there be a need for additional consulting services later, we have that
Correct.
there without moving or shifting. And maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much, but I would say to
Early in
answer,
the day.
what's that?
It's early in the day for the fiscal year,
Right,
But
to answer your first question, Scott, in principle, I am in favor of it,
I am as
but
well.
I am acutely mindful of the costs and other things that we're going to have to evaluate.
I think we were in a different, for me, we were in a different place when we started this conversation, having a planner, not being in the same fiscal situation that we've been in the last, year or so, in terms of overall capital funding and things like that. And there's just a difference between paying someone and having staff who has some capacity in addition to other things they're doing for us, because no matter what, it's more work, right? If we're outsourcing it, even if it would have been some work, right, or even the same amount of work for Brian in theory, and not having a planner we were, anticipating at that time $4,500 of cost. Now it's, 13,000, right? So whether we have somebody or not, I mean, that's all money that kind of rolls into what are we doing about capital and planning and all of those pieces. So it's all comes from that. I guess maybe from my comment, just to what you asked, a little bit of hesitation knowing the priority of the projects list that we have now and that funding sources are more scarce and the size and scale of projects keeps increasing. In addition to that, cost is different than it was before. Yes, we don't have a planner, so we aren't paying those wages, but that is money that is part of the pool, right? And so it's a bit different now at 13 than it was at 45. So, I also know we've done lots of feasibility studies over the years, and a fair number of them have been on the shelf and are probably almost not usable anymore and would have to be refreshed if we wanted to do things, and those things haven't happened. So there's a purpose and a value in that at times, and you have to do them to be ahead of what could come later. So I'm kind of in the middle, and I think if we can find, if there's more funding within other departments to help support this, I think I'd be more in favor of accepting it than just strictly taking it out of the planning line myself. I understand what you mean about, and I think I asked this before and you'd already told me and I forgot, but the state funding can't be matched with state funding. That's fair. I wish that wasn't the answer, because I think, that is if they're, some of their planning resources or funding directly could assist instead of, having to come out of us. Because I think our match needs to be just less than 8, right? Is that right? And so,
Right, it was just shy of 8,000 was our match, correct?
Right. But, so maybe I'm missing how that converts into 4,500 plus the planning time.
It was $4,500 plus just over $3,000 was the planning portion for COGS.
They got us to the 8. Oh, yeah, okay.
They
That's
utilized,
the gap.
they
I gotcha.
utilized her hourly rate
Right.
to figure that out, as opposed to what FERCog would be saying.
Which is
their
just a
hourly
staffing
is.
rate, when another agency bills us, they're billing us at a bill rate that is their hourly rate, their overhead for their benefits and other administrative costs. Gets rolled into that.
Excuse me. So that, it's about 5,000 more because we're having to outsource it.
Correct.
That it's going to cost us than we had anticipated.
Correct.
That's where that extra comes from.
That's
Okay.
correct.
That helps
Sorry,
me
I
get-
should have made that clear.
No, it just helps me get between A and B, and we'll get there.
Yep, that's correct.
If we're looking at that 8,500, and I look at that as still, it's in kind, but we have to pay for the in kind. We have to outsource that in kind.
Right.
Right.
When it's in kind, it's like I said, when it's staff,
Yeah.
it's less if there's capacity. in
Correct.
things Than it might sound like.
We would have been paying our staff member out of that line item, and that staff member's not here. And yes, it's an increase, but even if you looked at that entire 8,500 and say, that's in and above and beyond what we would have, that would have all been in kind, in-house from our planner. That planner's not here. We can match that 85 by mid-July, I'm sorry, mid-August, and we've funded the entire thing. So unless there's a plan that you know of to say, I'm already earmarking that salary line item for these other projects that I've heard people talk about, that are outside of planning, that are just straight capital projects for other things, but you already have an earmark on those, I would love to hear about those, because that's part of the conversation about why we wouldn't utilize that for this project. I mean, it's a fair point. If there's projects that are in the hopper that people are saying, we know there's multi-million-dollar projects in the hopper, but is this line item the earmark for how we plan on funding portions of those or not? If it is, then let's have that conversation. That's a great conversation, and then we can put this one to rest, that somebody's already proposing that we use this money for another project that they know of. That would be a compelling argument as to why we wouldn't use it for this project.
It's a little roundabout, so it's not that direct, but for me, because we don't have a source for capital funding anymore, and effectively, free cash is the source, that's where that money will end up a year from now if we don't spend it on anything else. And therefore, it would fund future capital, in theory, based on at least how the last fiscal budget process went, and kind of the way we found to bridge the gap in lack of raise and appropriate funding for capital. So roundabout for me, yes. It's not directly, there's a project this fiscal year that we would take $8,500 of our planning wages lines and pay a third party to work on for us in lieu of someone else, right? I don't have that lined out, but in the back of my mind, I see that as all potentially future capital money. Because the unspent is landing there, at least. Right now, that is the source. So that, for me, that's where I think.
Okay, thank you.
Has FERCog given you any type of timeline on when they might be able to tell you how much they'd be able to absorb?
I can absolutely follow up and ask that question.
How about this? I got the majority here support from the board, support the project and the idea of doing the feasibility, regardless of where that ends up. It sounds like we'd be interested in understanding what REC could do and would be interested in supporting financially from their budget. There's an offer in there to ask for COG if we need their support and what they can absorb too. So why don't we explore those options? Why don't we let them know we're looking at the funding, and we're also internally discussing how that affects our overall capital longer term plan. And so we're not there 100% on either piece. So we'll try to get a joint meeting. Maybe we can plan it for the 22nd and make sure we can get enough people for quorums, and then kind of have those data points as well, and have a kind of more thorough final discussion about yes or no. I think for mass trails or DCR standpoint, we're trying to do it in the next 30 days, because if that date doesn't work, we may have to move it around a little, but we're trying to get that together. And then if I understand this, it's an engineering and such, so we wouldn't be going through the process of procuring a contractor or anything, or an engineering firm. We can go with the one that's been identified, right?
Correct.
So from award contract, sign-offs and approvals from us and back and forth to an engineer doing it is a matter of scheduling, right? So for your November question, I guess I think we have a lot of runway to still be able to execute that, because the parties are aware and have, said they can support it. If it makes sense to confirm with the engineering firm and FERCog that they can still support that if they find out in August sometime that we are or aren't doing, that would be good to know, because it may take us a little while to get to the decision. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else that would be kind of holding us back, if that makes sense. Any concerns or?
Nope, I think
Right.
having those points of information for the next discussion makes sense.
Okay. Excellent. All right. And if they want to, we can let them know once we do have a confirmed date, that approximately after that, we'll have an answer one way or another. If they need that, beyond telling DCR, beyond telling them, August sometime.
Okay.
We can
Thank you
put
all for
out that and, question to the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee after this week about availability for the 22nd.
I've already emailed them.
Done. All right, we're ahead of
Have
the
they responded?
I'm not going to screw that up again.
Okay. I think we are good on the Mass Trails grant discussion. Let's go into the capital project request from the town clerk. Mr. Newton, if you'd come on up. Excuse me.
That was section 12.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Would it behoove, if I may,
sorry?
before you start, would it behoove us to just mention about the citizens petition before you get into it, or do you want to touch on that and then we can talk about it after?
You can certainly talk about that now if you'd like to. It's been certified. I did give it to Brian. All the signatures have been certified. We have ample voters that have signed to force it to be on the next special town meeting.
Okay, and so for,
That came in your email this afternoon.
yep, I'm just opening it now. So for the audience and the other people here, we have a citizens petition, excuse me, that, as the town clerk noted, has been certified with 127 signatures, which exceeds the 100 required to be on the next town meeting warrant. The petition states, when a motion is made at a town meeting to request a secret ballot for an article relating to a 2/3 vote to pass, this motion must be acted upon by the town moderator in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Part 1, Title 7, Chapter 39, Section 15. And so that is the petition that has been certified, and the language, correct me if I'm wrong, that will appear on on the next warrant.
Right, so the language is exactly as they wrote the petition. That is the language that must be on the warrant. I would note that perhaps it's a little vague. It doesn't actually say if it's a bylaw or not. It just might be, rule to be enforced at a town meeting. I'm not exactly sure how that would stand. It might be prudent to have amendments made if we're going to go down that route to say, this is a bylaw, this is what we want to do. It doesn't even talk about, I think in the past, the moderator has been good about if somebody actually makes a motion. And it gets down to the question of what is a motion? Just because somebody says, hey, can we? That's not in the format of a motion. So that's where the disagreement comes in. And so I think they're trying to clarify that process.
Yeah. The essence of it seems to be, from what I've heard, that the request is that if someone wants to have a secret ballot, that it happens, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, related to a 2/3 vote, but I think it's more general than that, right?
I get that sense that it
From the
might be
last
more general than
meeting.
that. I mean,
So,
I would say that at minimum, you'd want to include anything that was more than a simple majority, whether it's 2/3 or 9/10 or whatever, the statute requires, that you might want to do that.
we'll work with council and, yourself around language and a proposed amendment that, prior to, so that we can at least have that available to add some of that clarity if the
Right,
citizens at that meeting wish to
yep.
adjust it accordingly, so.
It was, I've been, as I noted in the materials that I sent you, I've been thinking about this for a little while about going a different route.
So I bring that up only to kind of open the floor for a discussion about what
Yeah, okay.
you're
so-
up here for, so which is the
Yeah.
ballot voting, methods that are out there, so
Right.
please take it from there.
Okay, so that's what I was looking at, and I hadn't really refined my thinking on it or really truthfully done any research on it. And so, getting that petition, knowing that when it was going around and everything, caused me to begin to look into the possibility of us getting a system to be able to vote using clickers. Basically, I guess you'd call them a clicker, it might not actually click anymore, but but it's a methodology that's electronic to tabulate votes. And it's quick and it's accurate. This This company, my understanding is there are actually 3 companies that basically make these things. And I'm only looking at one company at the moment. And the reason that I'm looking at this company is because of the number of installations they have in the Commonwealth. They currently are in, I believe he said 65 or 69 towns, something like that already. Interestingly, they're also in the U.S. House of Representatives, so I'm thinking the system is probably pretty solid. But anyway, all that aside, my thinking on this was the fact that every single warrant article can be voted secretly. That's the bottom line. Whether it's simple majority or supermajority, doesn't matter. And every article warrant, when it goes in, will say what's required, whether it's a 2/3 or a 9/10 or anything in between. And the system will automatically calculate whether it passes or fails based on how many people vote. And that's important, because if there's 100 people at the meeting and only 75 people vote, it's the result of the 75 voting people. Those 25 votes are considered abstentions. This would be the word. Again, all this will be explained, and we'll go over it in detail at the first meeting for sure, and then remind people at every meeting briefly about that process. And then we will have a screen that will have what the warrant article is that we're dealing with. And when it comes time to vote, when the moderator says the voting is now open, people can begin to enter their votes. And after, 30 seconds, voting is now closed and nobody can vote any further. It's important to note that if you make a mistake during that 30-second window, you hit yes and you're like, oh, no, I meant to hit no, you can hit no. And it won't count the yes vote. The system will only count the last button that you pushed before we close the count. That way, people have a chance to, if they, I've made a mistake, or I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, whatever the thinking is, We had a very good discussion with the tech guy on this, Brian and I, and it seems as though it would be a reasonable tool to not have to do ballots and run them through the ballot box. As you're well aware, that takes between 20 and 30 minutes, depending on how many people are there. Again, each one of these would take about 30 seconds per article. So that seems like a pretty good time savings and a trade-off. The system that I'm looking at, I had asked the salesperson for a vote an estimate of having 200 clickers available. I personally think that number is a little bit low, but what I did is I went back and I researched since about the early 80s, every single town meeting and how many people showed up at town meetings. And there were only 2 in which there were more than 200 people. One meeting was October 5th, 2009. There were 276 people at that meeting. And that was where we had several zoning changes. You may remember that one.
I do. It rings a bell.
Okay, so we had more than 200 there that evening. On July 25th, 2000, we had 302 people at a meeting. And that was for the $5.4 million safety complex.
Remember that one also.
Okay, so it's not, it is possible to have more than 200. And my thinking is, as budgets maybe get tighter in town and things like that, that there may be more people that come out to vote. So my thought is that we can start the system with 200, but likely I would get it up to 300 by buying an extra, 50 clickers a year or something like that to get it up to the 300 or the 350 mark or something like that. We'll see how that goes, but that's my thinking, because you want to always make sure that you have enough. But one other good news item is that the town of Orange has the same exact system. And I went over and I spent some time with the town clerk, because I wanted to see what goes into making this work in the background, since, we'd have to do that. And I learned a couple of interesting things. The first thing is they have, I believe it's 500 of the clickers. And we could use those clickers if we start our numbers at the correct numbering. So they're numbered 1 through 500, we would start at 501 and go up. And then we could just say to the system, we've got all of these numbers of clickers that are available. If we borrow theirs, we'd say 1 through, 700. Otherwise, we'd say, well, it's 501 to 700, something like that. So if we knew that something was really controversial and we really thought there'd be a large turnout, we have backup available readily to borrow clickers. And I thought that was kind of an important aspect.
Right.
The cost of the system, well, you saw the quote. I was guided to add 20%, so that's what I did. So, but the system comes in just under 10,000, but I did put in a quote for 12. I guess if you approve the budget at 12, I might spend the whole thing and get all the clickers up front, to be honest with you, see how that works, but questions?
If I may start?
Yes, sir.
So in looking at the quote, I guess first of all, you said you're only working with one vendor, so I'm assuming they have a contract, so procurement-wise,
Under 10,000, you only need one, but it's best business practice, and he gave many compelling reasons why he was looking at that system.
Yep.
If you're going to go over 10, I need to get competing quotes.
Right.
okay, so thank you for that clarification. So I would say, I agree with the potential need for more. One concern that I have about the number currently being under 10, you mentioned a screen, but I don't see that in the quote. Is that something we would have to
I
source?
mentioned what?
You said there'd be a screen, a monitor, that these results?
Because there's one at the school, we thought we could just use that to.
Okay, so that would be
yeah.
sourced independently? Okay. And I guess not so much a question, but a comment based on feedback I've gotten from constituents is, I would make a case that voter turnout would go up if people felt the ability to vote what their conscience tells them to do without fear of that death stare or side eye or any other type of reaction from their neighbors.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And that's why I think the 200 is low, but that kept it under the $10,000.
No, understood, and maybe we plan on making sure we maintain a good friendship with Orange for the time being, and we budget for
If we get mad
expansion.
at them, there's 64 others. No, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm kidding.
I know, and I kid too much, so I have to let it go when you do. But we went back to, in our last topic, in principle, I'm in favor of this.
Yeah, I met with Brian and Mr. Newton about this. I asked all the same questions, and one of my, just for full transparency, one of my hesitancies was I think people should have to be able to stand up and be, counted and stand by their convictions. But I also understand that we're missing and not hearing the voice of a lot of residents because they're not willing to. And I think their voice is just as important. So having that conversation and sort of fleshing that out with the two of them and the three of us at the table, I did come to the realization that while I would like to know how everybody voted and see people sort of voice that opinion loud and proud, I also want to hear from everybody consistently, no matter what our quorum number is in the room. We always have people that do not vote, even if it's a voice vote. You can tell that there's just not everybody voting. And if this increases that number, not even of participants that show up to the meeting, but just those that consistently show up, now actually have their voice heard through a click of a button, I'd be in favor of it.
Dick, what happens if, let's just say we order this and we just get the 200. First meeting, everyone's heard about it, the entire community shows up. What happens? Because you haven't, let's just
The
like, you
same
haven't had the
question.
chance to get more. Can they still be used? Do you do a combination?
You could probably do a combination, but I'm not sure exactly how that would work out logistically. I believe, well, so what happens is the very first time we use the system, the company comes and actually does it. They manage the computer and all of that, and they, I believe, also bring extra devices with them. So whether it would be enough, I mean, hard, how can I say? But you make your best estimate, I think. I mean, we have about between 1,400 and 1,500 voters in town, depending on whether you count the inactives. And not ever having, in recent memories, more than 302 people show up, I don't know that we'd ever have more than 500. So, and we might know after that first meeting and then say, okay, we're gonna make a concerted effort to go buy a few more clickers. That's the only thing I can think of.
Can you get a price for what, like another 200 to 300 clickers would cost?
The clickers are, what did you say they were, $39 a piece?
Yeah, I was gonna say they're 39 or 40 bucks a piece.
But again, at this point, we would just be going to a higher,
Yeah.
we'd be doing a different procurement. So the question is more about how much do you, if you all supported this, how much do you want to ask the voters to appropriate? And then we would have to conduct a competitive bid with the 3 companies that provide the service and see what quote gives you the lowest cost.
But we'd have to find a way to get to the number that we'd want to propose, which would require knowing
But that's at 39.
they're
right.
about 40 each.
Well, just remember too, though, that the other companies, I mean, these clickers are not interchangeable necessarily.
No, so
between
you
Well,
wouldn't
it'd
be able
a
to do that.
solution, right? It'd be a procurement for the whole thing, right?
You'd do the whole thing. So the idea of sharing with another community would no longer be viable if you didn't have this particular brand.
Do you know how often the technology changes? I'm just thinking, like, if we just went with 200 for right now, and let's just say our relationship with Orange soured 5 years down the road, and we did have to buy more, do you know how often that clicker technology changes?
Well, obviously, the clickers have changed from the very first unit, so the company's about 25 years old. However, those 25-year-old clickers still work on the current system.
Oh, so they do go back and support them?
They,
Okay.
they are forward, or backward compatible, I guess, whichever way you look at it. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
And so that's
Okay.
why I look at this and I say, this is, I would estimate at least a 20-year cycle on this because they've been in business for 25 years and all their stuff still works, the older stuff, the older clickers.
Okay, that's good to know.
Can they mix and match just on that same note? So like if you have a system and you buy them now, and then in 5 years they have the new version, they don't make the old clicker anymore, you can mix and
That was
add
my
more?
understanding.
Okay,
my
no, that's what
understanding.
it sounds like, it's really good to know.
Could we, if we were to move forward with this, would you be able to maybe to reach out to Orange for that very first meeting and just say, hey, could we borrow 5? Just to make sure that there's no compatibility issues or anything like that?
I'm certain that I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Good idea.
Would we, where was I going with that? I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, may I,
You
before I
can,
lose
yeah.
my thought, you can retrieve yours? So, and maybe for the purposes of the audience and those listening, what did they say regarding their security? Is it an encrypted system? Is there any potential for an outside source to hack the vote, if you will?
So, the system is not connected to the internet. They have they have their own Wi-Fi system receiver
Receivers, yeah.
right in the room, and if you have too many people, and you're gonna be 2 rooms, and there'll be another one in the other room, but they'll be connected somehow. I didn't get into all of those specific details. But the clickers they use your standard Wi-Fi radio range. But I'm not 100% sure exactly how it's encrypted, but, you know, he did talk about that it was. I don't know what they're using. I don't know.
But we can get you that information.
Yeah, so Jim, just in part of their PDF presentation, because I was concerned about that as well, it does say that they use a proprietary radio frequency and not a Wi-Fi, and they have Wi-Fi avoidance built in so that you don't get that interference from any outside, and it's completely offline.
So, as I said, it was a question mainly for the audience or those who don't have the ability. And I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. I just think that information is important for somebody who's watching from home that would have that question and concern about any type of election fraud.
Right.
And if
It's I think he said there was a limited range on it as well. Because they have done things like down at Foxborough, down at the football field, where they had the clickers don't have enough range, so they had to have multiple receiving units attached. So you gotta be, he said basically you gotta be in the room for starters.
They're helping the coaching staff decide if they should go for it on 4th down or?
Let's pull the audience. 50-50? Phone a friend.
And all the clickers are serial coded, so if one goes missing at the end of the night when we collect them all back, if one was to go missing, you can exclude that from the list going forward. So that clicker is no longer, if it turned back up again, it would not be able to respond. So those controls for that as well.
Yeah.
And I assume this is I come, I check in, they validate me that I'm a registered voter, and it's, yes, you're checked in, here's your clicker for the
That's
evening.
it exactly, yeah.
Okay.
We would not record anything about what clicker got into what hands, you know. In fact, talking with the Orange Town Clerk, what they do is, they come in bags of 50, and she's constantly mixing them up anyway, just to be safe on that, and then they just hand them out. They just hand them out. They don't even look at them, they don't record it anywhere. And then they have boxes by the exits where people are supposed to just drop them in at the end of the show, and, you know, hopefully a gentle reminder or something before they leave to say, please, you know, drop off your clicker.
We might need a couple ushers with baskets to run around and pick them up.
Well, you know, hopefully people will be good about dropping them off. They won't be much good for running a TV or anything.
Like Orange, for example, are there other towns in the vicinity that you know of that use it, or just Orange?
The only one I knew of, you know, that I looked up was Orange, because he had mentioned, because he knew Orange was right next door. I do not know if there's any in the immediate area, but I can certainly verify
I
that.
think the next closest was Barry.
I'm sorry?
I think it was Barry was the next closest.
He did say Barry,
Yep.
but I'm thinking that he also said that there are some that are possible sales, just as we are, that are closer.
Yeah.
So,
And then, do you know Orange or others who use this for all? Thinking of the petition that we just had and the dialogue that's behind it, are there towns that use this for all votes rather than just, because you
Yes.
don't have to use it for
Orange uses it for
secret ballot. They use it for every?
And not only do they use it for every article warrant, but if somebody makes an amendment, they add the amendment to that article. So if it's Article 5, they'll have like a 5A, so that you know that there's an amendment, and we're voting on the amendment now. And then when that's done, you can go back to 5.
As
And that
amended
way,
or-
the
okay.
moderator, sometimes moderators, even in Orange, they get a little confused about, they've talked around so many different things, and what was that amendment again, you know? And so we'll have a listing of all that stuff, yeah.
Okay. I tend to agree, Scott, just, you know, anecdotally of like, stand up for what you believe in, but not at the cost of not hearing voices, right? Like, that's more important. I agree that everybody gets a voice, however they feel comfortable presenting
Right.
it, so,
Yeah.
and that's why I ask, like, part of the process might be to recommend an amendment if we're thinking about something like this that identifies using a system for everything as a standard and instead, and then that becomes the standard, right? Instead of
Correct.
needing to
Yeah.
call for it or
Instead of
whatever.
needing that, so.
Right.
If we knew that we were gonna do this, perhaps we could suggest that we pass over that article, and we can explain to them that we're looking at this. I've already talked with a couple of people, with Dana, who was one of the ones going around getting signatures, and, you know, he would be happy to have the clickers. I talked with Rich, he's on board with getting the clickers. So I think they would be well received. I think the first time that the company comes, the very first time we use them, the company comes out and they run the system for us. When I talked with the Orangetown clerk, they suggested that whoever runs the system, it not be the moderator or the town clerk. They suggested somebody else, and so we can discuss that or whatever. On the other hand, this guy specifically said that some towns, the moderator runs the system. But I would imagine that would kind of slow them down a little bit, but
Sure, sure.
it's something to think about and to think of whether we want to do that or not. But I guess the thing that I'm getting at is when they come, I guess I would want something where we thought we were going to have a fairly large crowd. So if we, you know how it is, sometimes we have a hard time just getting the 17 people we need to go through the boring end of year stuff or something like that. I was thinking an annual town meeting might be a good place. But if you've got something in between there that's enough interest that would pull people out and want to be at the meeting, then maybe we have them come to that meeting. Anytime after that first meeting, if you want them to come out, they charge. And it's a flat fee. They don't bill you separately for travel or hotels or food or anything like that. It's a flat fee, but it's steep. It's $4,500.
Buy another 2 systems
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
I wonder if this article alone would be enough to draw people out
Right.
for this system, if that might be.
Well, they said some towns actually use them occasionally because it's viewed, they're more, no skin in the game, so it just.
Oh, they're more, neutral, and they
Yeah.
have no,
Yeah.
gotcha.
No, I agree with you. I think just seeing if we approve it to move forward and it becomes a warrant article in a future town meeting to fund it and approve it, I think people seeing that, reading that article saying, this will be my first town meeting that I go to, because they want to vote on it,
Right,
so I
right.
think,
Mackenzie, did you have a question if you want to?
Can I just shout it? Here's my teacher voice. I was just wondering if you had asked Orange how they collect them at the end of the night and what the percentage of loss is. Because I'm sure, because there are people that filter out before the end of the meeting or whatever, that people just are gonna forget and you're gonna lose some. So do they have a sense of how much they lost every time?
So far, they haven't lost any, so that's the good news. They just put boxes with labels on the boxes at the exit. Please return clickers here. And so far, they haven't lost any, so.
And so when we think about how many we're gonna buy, we may want to think about a percentage of loss, 10% loss, so that we cushion that in, or just know to rely on Orange for the first year
Right.
worth of meetings
Right,
to
right.
buffer.
Yep. Good question.
Other questions?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it's,
All right.
my thoughts would be if we're going to propose it, we propose it in the same meeting, the next town meeting when we bring the citizens' petition.
And I would just say when we do the warrant information, maybe we actually could put right in the little blurb that we do, the company will be on hand giving a demonstration. We will be using them in this meeting as a demonstration.
Can we?
I will ask.
Will they? 'Cause I think that would be
I don't know,
great.
they tend to like to do things via Zoom because it's travel costs and everything, but
Sure.
I will ask them, and hopefully that won't count as our first meeting,
Right. Well, it might be worth it
Yep.
for the citizens, and the concerns they have if we had to pay for it one more time. I mean, but it'd be good to, I think it's a great idea if we could bring the article and example of what it could be to that meeting that night.
Yep.
Here, you can vote on that with what we're proposing instead. Or see it, see it, live it.
Conversely, maybe, I'm not sure if this makes sense, but maybe I could talk to Nancy, the Orange Town Clerk, and
Yeah.
say, maybe you could do this, just one article, just to show people how it's
Could you
done
come
and what
over
it
and-
feels
and-
like and what it looks like.
Let us borrow and run one
Yeah,
for
right,
us.
yeah, just for one
Sure.
article, just so people get an idea of what we're talking about.
If there's some cost and time of a person coming to do it, I think that'd be very reasonable for us
Yeah.
to afford as well. So, as maybe a better option, because and I'm hearing that, although I'm sure Capital should, and I recommend Capital and Finance get together and discuss this in detail with a quorum, but obviously, because it's not tonight, but the idea that we get, I think 500 probably is a starting point, just to know it's covered, because I would think you'd have to go to ballot if not. And not mixed, because I can't imagine how we do that reliably.
right. I don't know how
And
it would
if
be
we have
either.
such turnout that we are out of clickers, we don't want to be doing ballot, right? It's almost like the very reason you don't want to run out of clickers is
Yeah.
because you don't want to go the other way. So, and I
Exactly.
get borrowing them, but you can't do that on the fly. Can I come get them now? Hold on that article. But if we do that, then the procurement is now going to be, a procurement and not, we can select the vendor. So on the outset, so it may make sense to see if we couldn't get Orange to do it rather than having the vendor do it for that reason.
Okay.
So are you suggesting that we should resubmit or revise and resubmit the capital request based on 500 units?
I'm thinking that I, and maybe the rest of the board, feels that we should do more than 200 on the outset.
Okay.
If that number is 500, I asked my gentleman here, I would say that Capital Finance should have the same discussion and come to whatever conclusion, and hear our recommendation or our thoughts
Okay.
before we need to revise it, right? Because we know what it takes to revise it, unless either of you think differently.
Well, this is just an internal exercise. This wouldn't be, we're not asking the vendor to do anything at this
No,
point.
no, right, exactly. So it's not maybe providing the information for that meeting, making sure they understand what it would cost to buy 100, each 100 more, whatever.
Okay.
It's like $4,000 each, right?
So,
I'll work with the town clerk on that.
yeah, my thought was, I know Mr. Newton had mentioned this earlier, that if there is no contingencies that change it, but there's a contingency built in, we would have capacity with the 12,000 if approved to purchase 250. Is there $39 a piece, so there would be enough in there to purchase 250, not 200. I don't foresee getting 500 people on day one of using them. It's just,
No,
I
I
just
hear you.
don't see it. While I see in the future, we would need to get to that capacity. I know when we spoke, the goal was to increase until we felt, in year one, if we saw that we were hitting that ceiling of 250, we need to immediately look at how do we get it. We can borrow them for now, but maybe next year it's not 50 more, maybe we need to look at 100 more. And so we get to a point where we then plateau again, and that's where we stop buying. I would hate to buy 500 and find out that we only see, we plateau at 350 every year for the next 10 years, and we're thinking, well, we just bought another 150 of these at $40 a whack for nothing.
30% loss rate instead of 10. No. Yeah, understood.
So,
I wasn't proposing that I have the right number, just the idea that we
Yeah.
probably want to start a little bit higher.
I think Orange has a much bigger voter registry than we do. They're a larger municipality than we are, and they have, 500 has been adequate. I just think 500 would be more than we need
Right.
in our town.
200 felt a little uncomfortable to me, but.
Yes.
Yeah.
250, I think, makes sense if we can get it there, if it's worked in, if there's the ability to borrow for that fiscal year, if we happen to think we're going to go above 250, and then purchase another 50 in the following year for a couple $1,000s. Just work that in for years 2 and 3 until we get to whatever we feel is the plateau, plus some.
Dick, what was the highest attended meeting again? 300 and how many people? Did you say?
302.
302.
What was the other over? There were two over 300?
No, 302 and
302.
276.
27. Oh, okay. I thought they were both over 3. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, And that one was in 2000, yeah.
It was in
Jack-
July
Jackie?
of 2000.
Yep.
There
You
was,
were talking about numbers, you can't fit 500 people in the gym,
Yeah.
so.
I understand that.
So you know, we just would have to find another location. Do we actually have that many? It was just we're talking about big numbers, but we do have some space limitations on the area that we use to.
Well, right, you couldn't fit them in the gym, but you could put them in the cafeteria.
Can I, just
But
one
anyways,
second,
I just wanted to.
Yep.
just because I'm a viewer who watches meetings at home, can we ask people to come up? Because it's very hard when you're at home watching to hear those conversations happening.
That's what I get for letting it happen once.
Yep, there you go.
No, it's all right. We'll have to be consistent, because
But that does bring up a good point, is that, you know, there is only so much capacity in the gym, and if there was an overflow, we'd need to be prepared to use more space of the school, you know, the cafeteria or something like that. As long as they have the means to hear what's going on and to talk to the moderator to be able to address any issues.
right.
Yep.
Or we might be continuing it to another time, at which point you can prepare for more and borrow them ahead of time. so-
Correct, yep.
It's a fair
Yep.
point. Anything else on this topic? I think we're all interested and in support, you know. The Finance and Capital will be scheduling meeting, or if it's at the next joint, we'll let you know which, and they can advise whether they would like you to be present, or, you know, to answer any further questions.
Okay, all right, very
Okay.
good.
But I
Thank
think
you.
we'll, sounds like
you.
we'll try to find a way to put this on that meeting, the next town meeting probably,
Okay.
which is town code probably, so it'll be a decent turnout,
Okay,
I bet. Thank you.
thank you.
some very interesting testimonials on their website.
I bet. I scrolled through their
From some of
security a
our-
little bit.
From
but
some of our, well, Massachusetts neighbors.
I did find it interesting they have a section on their website that's New England town meetings as opposed to town and council meetings right above it. I guess we're special in the way we hold our meetings.
We are special.
Okay, let's see, where are we here? Discussion regarding the former IEP mill site.
So there were two things that you all discussed having me follow up on since your last joint meeting. The first was to meet with your engineers to go back through demolition options. So your first document outlines a few options for your consideration. The reality is $600,000 is not going to be sufficient to tackle much of what we want to do. So the first schematic is the initial diagram and the initial plan that was submitted to Mass Development for the site readiness grant. So the buildings that have that hash pattern on them were the buildings that were to be demolished. And then there was the proposal to create enough space to create an access road. So they've now layered over that with those sort of red cloud-looking shapes, the focal points for the 4 pages that then follow. So if you're looking at 5B and 5C, that lower section, that's the closest structure to the river. It is 3 stories in height. That first proposal outlines what they believe to be the demolition cost. But of note, the most expensive cost is a new wall that would have to be constructed to shore up the remaining structure. And that's a cost of $325,000 alone. So to complete that work, plus to hold a reasonable contingency, they estimate just that work at $813,750. And that doesn't mean the rest of that structure may not be demolished in the future. So I think the hard portion of that to accept would be spending that type of money on a brand new wall that then may become rubble in a future phase. The next option explores, I'll scroll back up real quick, explores 7A and 7B. These are the newest structures on the property. Removal of these structures are much more straightforward. They're single-story structures. They're slab construction with a steel frame, sheet metal siding, and insulation. So we have very little asbestos or concerns about hazardous materials. The enclosures that we'd have to erect to shore up the remaining structure would be minimal at best. So that work with a contingency is expected to cost $213,000. There are 2 additional sections that would also need to be looked at. The insurance company has already noted to you that they want you to secure the roof that is failing in 2 sections. So there is a section of the boiler room that was identified for repair, and there's a section of building 4B that is scheduled for repair. Those are the sections that were noted as concerns. And the following pages outline those costs. So 4B, which is the larger roof section to replace, is with a healthy contingency, $142,000. So that's the removal of the material that needs to be removed and abated, and then the construction of the new roof. And then there's the boiler room replacement, and that with the contingency is $124,000.
I have a really dumb question.
I doubt that.
Do we have to put the roofs back if we take them down?
If the structure's
I
if
said
the
it was a dumb question.
no, if the structure's
dumb.
down on the ground, absolutely no. Of course you don't.
Yep.
If the structure is remaining, but that section of roof is removed, they expect some coverage.
Tarps?
Atrium?
I don't think either of those would be acceptable.
Pergola?
Something to ensure that no rain or snow or
okay.
ice is going to accumulate in the building.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
Yeah.
Because all the wild animals aren't bad
They're
enough.
already in
We need
there.
to protect them from the elements.
Agreed.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Did they happen to mention, because I doubt we asked, because I wasn't really thinking that way, are there any other areas other than 7AB that we could demo that has interior walls sufficient, that we wouldn't be rebuilding walls where we tore parts down?
The only other section, and Glenn was kind enough to come with me on part of that tour with Thomas, the only other section that they talked about is wanting to look at building 1, which is that more 1970s structure in the front. But we've had some people express interest in reusing that structure because the actual concrete is in fine shape. It's the interior that was damaged. It's not the concrete. So ripping that down doesn't make a lot of sense when we have other sections that the masonry is failing.
We do have the standalone building though.
You do have a standalone building, but that's not
Not
currently.
8, but the other one, right by the tunnel.
Oh, you're
That's
talking.
not actually attached to anything.
You're talking about the old field building.
It's 3 on
Yep.
the print. Actually, it just popped into my head that that's also technically a standalone building.
Correct. That could be parceled out and removed. I could get you a price on that.
I asked because I'm struggling with not tearing something down if we have money, but I don't know if I can stomach spending half of that money on rebuilding something that we expect will probably get torn down.
Agreed.
There's a fancy new wall to break down while you break down the rest next time.
I felt less concerned about the roof once I saw the cost of the new wall.
So you're saying,
It's not a good comparison.
No.
The relativity. Sorry. Yes,
you're
sir.
saying building 3, you'd like to?
I'm just saying building 3 is a standalone building. It's not attached in any way. So from a rebuild cost, there shouldn't be any. And 7AB, it has solid adjoining walls with like passageways. So the restoration to secure the building again when those are ripped down is minimal, right? Versus spending $300,000 on rebuild of something we probably going to rip down again. I just,
No,
it
I'm
kills me.
with you on that. I don't want to spend $350,000 to rip it down in another year and a half.
No, it doesn't mean that building 5, just to be clear, we assume it should come down and it may need to come down. They didn't seem to think that building 5 couldn't be salvaged in certain areas. So the side that we were focusing on is the one that is deteriorating. That doesn't mean that there's not somebody out there who may want it. And having a new wall may be helpful. I don't know.
Is there a reason why if we were to take 7A and 7B, that just simply that back wall could remain and not be taken? So we don't have to rebuild it?
There's no rebuild in the 7AB.
Unless I'm looking totally in the wrong spot because these numbers are really,
think
really
you are.
tiny.
Yeah, they are tiny, I'm sorry.
Right here.
Yeah,
The
that's,
rebuild-
That was gonna be fine.
No, it's 5.
It
Can
was
you,
over here.
Yeah, rebuild is
Okay.
in 5.
thank
Yeah.
you know where
you.
the corner's falling off that we talk about when we walked it last?
Mm-hmm.
That's the tear some of that down. There's still an open wall.
Yep. I don't have a magnifying glass.
That's
really
fine.
And when we
small.
walked it,
Oh, yeah,
we
you
were,
can print it, and we can zoom over here.
there's many passageways back and forth through each of those levels, and the hope had been that they could just brick up those openings and just focus on the infill. But from my understanding, not being an engineer, their assessment, that would not be structurally sound. So
Okay.
the only structurally sound approach would be to build from the ground all the way up with a new wall.
I'm gonna ask it, because it is a dumb question. Do we have to make it structurally sound when we're done? Because it's not structurally sound right now. I know that's, I know, but it's, the side of the building's falling onto the ground, there's holes in it. It's
I
not
agree.
structurally sound, so the idea that we have to make it structurally sound while we tear things down just
I hear you.
bothers me. I know that the
hear you,
reality
yeah.
is yes, but
I hear you.
So I have a couple of
I had to say it.
Yeah, I have a
Go
couple of
ahead, go
comments
ahead.
and then some questions. The comments are, for all the reasons people have said, I don't think even looking at 5B or the combination of the ones that exceed our $600,000 anyways, we'd be having to look for over $200,000 or $300,000, whatever the difference
Yep.
was, to try and make that happen. A lot of that's contingency, and it may
Right.
not come to fruition when it's all said and done. But the total of 4B, 7A, and B in the boiler room, with contingencies and everything, is $480,300, under our $600,000. Of that 480, $83,300 is contingency,
Right.
which may not even come to fruition. So you could be looking at 400,000
Right.
utilized out of that 600.
Correct.
To the chairman's point, if we could also, in addition, expand our scope. If our goal is to make this as pleasing to a future developer, if we have the capacity to potentially use up to between $120,000 and $200,000 more, if we have that capacity, could we look at building 3 as adding that in as a alternate number 1, if we were to put it out? Depending on where the construction lies. I looked at the contingency for 7A and B. Part of the contingency is for the roadway. I don't know why we would put that in there. Maybe that's just language that didn't get pulled out when
From
they
the
realized.
previous plan, maybe.
I'm assuming that is, but should that also drop what that contingency is?
Right.
Because we don't need a contingency for widening the road and putting in the road. We are simply just trying to utilize our $600,000
Right.
to remove this so that we can appeal to a potential buyer.
Right. That's fair.
Or reduce our cost to raise the entire building later. If that's what people vote.
I think the road, Scott, is because they call out that they need, for the equipment to get through, they need a temporary access road.
Okay, so it's not the permanent, it's just the temporary to get the
Yeah,
raised.
if I'm reading this right.
Okay, thank you. I must have glossed over that piece of it. I saw the thank you for the clarity.
I do remember, now that you mention it, reading that.
Yeah. So I just think if we're looking to utilize the grant that we've been sitting on for several years now, before they just pull it back from us, I would look at, I know what we want to do, but I would look at what we have the capacity to do and just get it done. The other question I had is, does that meet the criteria of the grant to just do partial demolition for those pieces?
The initial grant application was
Was for
selective
partial.
demolition.
Okay.
It was only because of the conversation, just like we had on the wall, we were struggling with the idea of spending money on a partial demolition that then would require us to shore up the remaining building that would likely have to be torn down. That didn't make sense to us. And so we started pursuing full demolition and going through all those iterations. I think if I came back to them and there was a solid commitment to use this money to start demoing sections of the building with a rationale as to why certain sections are being selected, I think this is a very reasonable conversation. To know that we're not wasting grant money on a temporary solution and instead focusing on permanent solutions, I can't imagine they'd be against that. Ultimately, it's Mass Development's decision as to whether or not they still support the project.
Right, that's where I was
Right.
going, is I don't know if they would still support it. And I think part of the contingency is the end use.
Right.
or the end purpose, whether it's us tearing the rest of it down on our dime, whether it's us selling it, repurposing it, refurbishing building 2, like all of that is still part of whether or not they would approve it. So,
Well, it's
Yeah,
always gonna have the payback clause if we make a profit,
correct.
so
Right.
beyond certain costs, so.
Yep.
Brian, do you think it would be reasonable if we're going to have a joint meeting on the 22nd for them to compile all options except, I'm going to call it number 1, the one for 813? And then using, like, looking at all the contingencies and how can do they need 20% built into everything if it's compiled into one thing? And then that
that's the direction,
remaining
yeah.
200, what could they do for that as well? And
Happy
maybe
to.
have something for us for the 22nd, if that's
Absolutely.
enough?
Yeah, I can follow back up with them in the morning.
So I was looking at it quickly, it's about 480. That's what you
Yeah,
came up with, right?
480 and
But
300.
185 of that is
No,
contingency.
yeah, 83.3. Well, so there's other contingencies. So there's, if you look at all of the
I
allowances.
meant all contingencies.
All allowances. I didn't look at all
contingencies. Oh,
allowances. I
okay.
simply just looked at the top line is the contingency. The other one is general conditions and engineering fees, so I left those
Oh,
out
fair,
of it.
okay, fair. You only put in the 20, yeah, no,
I
that's
only
fair,
put
that's
the
fair,
20%.
That's fair, yep, that's fair.
Because the engineering fees are still going to be there, the general
Mm-hmm.
conditions you may still use some of that. So I didn't want to assume that wouldn't.
Engineer to demo.
I know.
I hear you.
I said the
You
same
know how I
thing when we
feel.
first did it.
Yeah.
Engineer to demo does not make sense to me, but
That being said, I did look at the, just considering the rebuild costs of those 3. Because I'm still struggling with the rebuild costs, the repair, rebuild, like, because we're tearing some down, but then we're rebuilding. We're talking about, 125 plus contingency, so it's about, $150,000 of that 480 is repair the roof, repair the adjoining building, repair the whatever, right? Between all those plus the 20% contingency is about 150K of the 480. Still feels like a lot to repair things rather than just to tear stuff down. Because I get the roof and I get that that's what the insurance company identified. We're not going to meet their needs. Like, I think the reality of us trying to pursue a path of keeping it up to date enough that they're happy is kind of a fool's errand to some degree, because it'll be, well, now half the building's falling off, those kind of things. Sorry. So I just looking at that going, where can we holistically just tear down with minimal repair cost if we're going to do tear down at all?
okay.
Because I personally feel like we're not going to get to a point where it's regularly, steadily secured and structurally and weather resistant, right? Sound and weather resistant, which is what the insurance company is vying for. And they've told us for 3 or 4 years straight that they're not going to renew it. And then they do. And then they say they won't, and then they do. But at some point they're going to say, well, unless you do this, and we can't do that, right? We're just going to throw money into it needlessly. So I don't know if I feel like, personally, that the direction to spend money to go repair roofs is a good use of it. Because we're not. I get someone could use it, but we've tried how many times and no one's shown interest and said, oh, I'd love the first 5 buildings. Let me take it and run with it. So will they, though? And so I'm not saying you know the answer. Maybe someone would, and we don't know what the right combination of buildings is. So we keep coming back to demo.
Yeah.
So to throw some money at repair instead of just the minimum to secure the building again after demos. So the roof repair sections feels wasteful to me. Feels like throwing money to just into a hole, because we're gonna
And you're not wrong about that.
tear it down and throw it in the hole.
But I think and I'm not a demolition expert, so other people who understand this work better will better understand these pieces. But as the engineers explained, and Glenn and Tums can correct me if I'm misstating it, the cost to, let me back up, the structure has subsurface components to it. So even if we're looking at the facility from the ground, right?
Yeah.
And assume that we can just take down levels 1 and 2, that doesn't mean there's not 2 additional levels below it that then also need to be excavated. That material needs to either be processed, removed, crushed, trucked off-site. So there are
So-
additional costs, and if you have to shore up anything that's left, it's going from that ground level all the way back up to the top.
Fair. Oh, I don't care if they backfill the side of the hole in the
Yeah, that
lower
unfortunately is
levels
not an
because we're
option.
not keeping it.
Well, no, so I disagree that it has to be removed, the subsurface level. And the reason I say that is you can still board and secure everything that's below ground. You are not required to remove that. You can still, if you get a cost estimate of what it takes to remove floors 1, 2, and 3, and you leave ground
Fair.
below ground level, and you say we have solid surface that's intact with concrete floors and iron trusses, and all we have are 3 entry points of stairwells that are now exposed,
That's fair.
and we board those up.
Yep.
You don't have access to the below ground.
With the understanding that, can you reach the structure to demo what you need to?
Sure,
include the site?
there's a
Fair
lot
questions.
of, but to
Yes.
think that it has to be 100% excavation, all of it out of the ground and taken out.
Fair. But I think to that point, even though that could be a scenario that has some viability, and I can get you costs on that if you'd like me to explore that, but there may be costs associated with shoring up certain sections. There may be other
Sure.
site prep costs that then go into this. The other thing that they brought up to us is that there's an environmental permitting process to all of this. And the painted brick material that has to be processed and taken off site has to be permitted through federal and state regulatory agencies. And so there's a cost of that permitting and that process in here as well. So when they're calculating tonnage that they anticipate to be removed, and that's fueling some of these costs that look really high to us, there's a certain component of that is required that we can't get around.
Fair, but we're talking about rebuild costs primarily,
Yeah.
not processing.
So a little bit, I feel like we're going in circles.
Yes.
That's what we do on this project.
And I want it to stop. So what I'm actually wondering is, it feels like there's a lot of conflicting goals. This proposal says this, we think something else. So I almost wonder if at the joint meeting on the 22nd, instead of going back to them right now, would it be a better idea for the 3 groups to come together and figure out what our goals are? What do we want that $600,000 to accomplish? And then go back to them and say, we've looked at your proposals, we want buildings, blah, 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 and we want this. Get us a price for this. Because I feel like we just keep going back and then we get their proposal back and we're like, oh, but what about this instead? Or what about this instead? And I just feel like there's so much work going into it that I don't feel we're clear as what we want.
Do you want them to attend?
If they can give numbers on the fly.
I don't know that they'll be able to give you numbers on the fly, but if you have some scenarios that you want them to have rough numbers for, I can ask them in advance and they can be prepared for that.
I mean, there's benefit in having them here, but I think to Deb's point, we need to get our ducks in a row first.
Yeah, I don't feel like we know for sure what.
Okay.
I think every proposal that's given to us causes other questions, and I think it's great. But I think we're at that point where we as groups have to come together and say, enough with the proposals. We've had 12 of them. We just need to pick what's important to us and for our community and go from there.
Agreed. Okay. So revisit on the 22nd?
Apparently, I'm killing the chairman with that.
Please don't do that. Revisit. Okay.
Yes, revisit.
I'm good with it.
If there's data points you all want in the meantime, knowing sooner than later would be helpful because it took me 2 weeks to get this round of
So like
proposals.
by Wednesday?
Ideally, so I have a chance to, but I will give them feedback tomorrow morning initially, and if there's any guidance, if you can send it my way, I will pass that along and try to make sure we have that info for your 22nd meeting.
I'm hearing the guidance is we need to figure out what the guidance is.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay.
I think we all have opinions, but
Right.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
the only thing I can think of is if they point us in what direction of demoability without repair. Like, can they say if you come at it from the front and the back and the side, these are the ways to go through it. But again, I don't know that that's worth it until we've talked. So
Okay.
feel either way. Wait and talk.
I vote for wait to the 22nd, and I think we all, as all 3 groups, need to get together and figure out what our goals are.
Got it. 'Scuse me. Excuse me.
Um,
Excuse me. 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 Excuse
anything else for the joint meeting? I know we have the North Street paving, but I don't know if that is something that, well, I guess it's a meeting with a few members. There's not a joint meeting, so. Anything else on here you would like to sit for before we continue on in general?
I think we're good. I'm good.
Did I miss anything for the, okay. Well, since there wasn't a quorum, I don't need to
Nope.
adjourn the joint meeting, so thank you for attending, and we will, if we don't get confirmation on a quorum for the 22nd, we'll find a date that does work, and we'll let everybody know.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll jump to discussion regarding the draft communication of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Thank you, Jim, for working on this with Council and Brian. Anything you wanted to say before we kind of dive into it? Are you good?
No, just that I tried to capture the sentiments that were shared in the meetings where this has been discussed. The letters and the responses we've received from, to and from Union 28 Joint Advisory and where we would like to go. So I hope that I've captured it and taken the work with Brian and Town Council into consideration. But at this point, I would yield to you two gentlemen for any additional thoughts or input.
There's a lot there, and like I said, I think a lot of work went into refining it to that point. If you'd like to comment first, that's fine. I know the new superintendent has joined us this evening and is interested in saying something, related to it. We gave her a copy before the meeting, so she's aware of kind of what's happening. Obviously, it's not hers. It's not about her in her new role, but she did ask if she could say a few words about what we're thinking and, contemplating here. So I don't know if you want to hear that after or before you comment on the letter.
I'll hear it before.
All right,
That's fine.
Shannon, welcome. Come on up. Thank you for joining us this evening. And do you go by White Cleveland? Your last?
I go by Cleveland.
Cleveland, okay.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to it. Obviously, I'm aware of the situation. It was not, on my watch, so to speak, but it's my watch now. So I felt that it was in my purview and my responsibility to at least address some of the concerns. I'll address them as frankly as I can, understanding that there's some other ongoing investigations that are happening that I can't divulge here. I'm going to be very honest. I think that the letter is well written. I think your points are valuable and some of the same concerns that I had coming in. I would ask you to consider, this is my 5th day on the job, but to give me an opportunity to perhaps get some of these answers, because I think it's really about how do we prevent, what is the process, what was not followed? Is it this was an error in how someone not following our procedures, or do our procedures need to be more clearly communicated and articulated? And that's on me at this point. And if I can recap with, because I did see the letter. You know, I would like to have an opportunity to review the current policies and ensure that all principals within the union have a very clear outline of what steps are, because we'd love to say that these situations won't occur again, but we can't make that guarantee. Give me an opportunity to review those policies with our union council, talk with our partners in safety in the different communities. And I'd like an opportunity to talk with the joint school committee about it. I'm aware of the correspondence. I'm not sure what the rationale for that wasn't part of those conversations, and I'm not sure if the whole committee is aware of it. I can't speak to that. I've gone to several of those meetings and I don't remember it coming up, but I'd like to ensure that that conversation is happening at that level. I think part of the frustration is you don't feel, and I'm certainly not trying to speak for you, but feel maybe like they were an adequate partner about this is a problem and what are we going to do to rectify it, and not feeling heard. So I'd like to have an opportunity to do that. I had a very lengthy and candid meeting with some members of the different Erving entities. Recognize that there is some bridge building to do there. I've had some very frank conversations with the Erving School Committee. I want to be a partner, and although, as Jacob said, this is not a reflection of my judgment, it will be an extra task for me to have to, these tasks have to happen anyway, but to have to also potentially deal with the Department of Ed, which is certainly your purview, but may make those things more complicated for me, and not having an opportunity to get a little bit in front of it and have these tasks done. So I'll support whatever the board decides, but I just want to be able to share from a moving forward point. This might muddy the waters and make things more difficult. That is what it is, but I felt like I wanted to have an opportunity to let you know that I do hear you. I don't have any disagreement or bone of contention with any of the very legitimate and important questions that you've asked. I just would like to have more than maybe 5 days to get some of those answers and some clarity around the issue that is needed.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Please stay. I think probably my fellow members will have some dialogue.
Yes.
But thank you for being open to it. Thank you for being present and being here tonight. I know we all appreciate that. So
That in itself speaks volumes to me.
100%. I said it earlier in an email to her that, I could speak on behalf of you to say that your presence and being here and being, interested, whether you came up and spoke or not, because we hadn't discussed that yet, is important and means a lot to all of us, because this is what we want to do. We want to collaborate. Gentlemen.
Sure. I'll jump in. Hi. Valid points that you said about muddying the water when you get Department of Ed involved. It's a different layer of oversight and management and intrusive handling of personnel matters. Completely understand that. There's a line in that letter that speaks more so to the accountability piece and not to the future repair and bridge building that I believe you have the ability and task and it's your task to sort of spearhead that piece. And I think that's the piece that you're talking about doing first, the bridge building and the ensuring that we're all on the same page about protocols and policies and our processes are in place and we're doing that. The part that I want to rely on DOE about is what guidance they can advise, and this is outside of your purview, of what accountability measures do we still have as residents, as elected officials in this town to hold those that are named in that accountable for their actions. And that's not something we would task you to do. It's outside of your purview. the question I have is, how much time do you feel? And this is you don't have to answer this, you can think about it, you can respond back in an email later. It's not going to be a quick fix, and there's going to need some time, but also the longer we wait without addressing that piece of accountability, the ability for DOE to want to step in and sort of advise and do it, it may diminish. And I don't know if it will, but, if we're talking, let's wait until halfway through next school year so we can see where we're at, that it could be problematic.
Right.
We're looking for, this is an employee, and there's other employees that are involved, that we would like some resolution quicker than later.
would be both.
So I don't know if there's, a way to amend this. The reason I asked about timeline is I'm wondering if there's any desire by this board to look at amendment and holding off on this, even if it's just a few weeks, to sort of put together a plan for what you hope to accomplish in the first 30 or 60 days of your, time here, and fixing some of those gaps and those issues that we had, and embedding that in as part of the process that we took to answer those questions, but still looking for the commissioner to give guidance on the other portion that is outside of that purview, and it's the accountability piece. So that's the only potential modification I would make if anybody is willing to do it. As you said, I think it's well written. It's as accurate as it can be. It's spot on. It grabs the sentiment of everybody I've talked to on this board, off this board, residents, non-residents that are aware of the situation.
Sure.
So,
Could I ask a point of clarification? When you say accountability, are you looking at accountability about the processes or the HR
accountability
issue?
on their actions or inaction. So on a personal level, and that's why I say it's outside of your purview. Those staff members don't answer to you. They're no longer employed here.
Right.
So, or at least one of them isn't. Yeah, that's what I'm talking. It's not accountability about fixing processes or any of that. That is what I would think you would want to make sure you're ensuring that you're doing with school committee and any other department that is involved in that. Mine is more about there was a level of inaction and disregard for safety that people need to be held accountable for. And the response we got from the chair of Union 28 was, they're no longer employed here, or at least they're on leave and they're not going to be employed here. We're not going to worry about it. And that's unacceptable. So as the next step is who's above the Union 28 chair is the commissioner.
So, and I certainly don't speak for Desi, but just in my experience, the only thing Desi could do is look at licensure, just so we're clear about that. And that's what we're really talking about as far as their ability to, and sometimes it happens, and that there are educators for whatever reason who, through actions, are deemed to be unfit for licensure, because there is that little codicil in the licensure that says that, something about judgment and that sort of thing. So that's really the only thing Desi would do, because they will defer and say, we don't get involved in HR matters. But they could look at licensure, whether this will meet the benchmark.
Very aware of that.
Yeah, just so we're clear, whether this meets the benchmark or not.
Correct.
I don't know.
So if I may, I don't think I'm alone in this, but two priorities that I have very much related. One is the accountability piece, verbatim, that Mr. Bastarash just mentioned. But equally important, your presence alone, as I said, speaks volumes. And the need for us to build those bridges and create a positive working relationship with solid lines of communication and understanding, mutual goal, which is the best possible environment for our students and staff. Full stop. That being said, I would recommend to this board that I take this draft and rework it in such a way that allows Mrs. Cleveland, Superintendent Cleveland, sorry.
Shannon is fine.
Shannon, after July 1, I just want to give proper respect to the position.
I appreciate it.
That we can look at it in a way that we can work together as boards and a community and other committees to focus on those things that she mentioned and rethink what we're going to ask from the commissioner in terms of the accountability. There is no doubt we can all be very grateful that this didn't have any number of alternate outcomes. Moving forward, I think there's an opportunity that's presented here to have a better result by working together and making that opportunity and option open for now. I'm willing to go back and rework if that's,
I have no problem with that. I think the rework that you talked about was exactly what I was saying. It's, let's work with the superintendent and the other departments, the other boards and commissions that are involved in this and make sure that we're all on the same page and we're building that and restructuring that first. I don't think we have to wait 6 months to start that process. I think we could start that pretty quickly. I don't have to echo it, but I will. We haven't had a presence from the Union 28 in a meaningful way in quite some time. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely, and I spoke with Brian about being informed about, I can't promise I'll get to every meeting, but I do recognize that we are part of a municipality and we are a large part of it, and that we need to be better partners about knowing what's going on with our team and within the community.
Thank you. I have no objection to your recommendation.
I share your sentiments, and I would also maybe add giving Shannon the opportunity to discuss with the joint supervisory, her oversight, reiterating the concern that we tried to convey to the whole group if she's given the opportunity and able to, and ensure that they've all had the proper amount of time to reflect and determine what, if any, steps they wish to take. Obviously, we were more than dissatisfied with the response we got so far. However, I don't know to what level all of the members are up to speed with everything that occurred. I think this draft has sufficient detail for anyone who might not be on the depth of concern that we were trying to raise. And Chief, brought to us that kind of started down this path specifically. And just understanding how I would feel if I was on a committee and wasn't aware of action of this significance taken or responded to by other members. I would ask if you were all willing, if we put again, like you said, a short time window on it to also allow that. And if there's no further response or different response or request from the joint supervisory committee after that, then concurrently, if you were working on a adjusted draft that maybe with the help of the superintendent speaks to what we're already working on in a proactive way and focuses more on the accountability concern and meets the the second, if we have to pick, need of the two goals that you mentioned, which is to ensure that we've done, we noted in a prior meeting, everything that we could to ensure that something like this didn't happen again anywhere, not just in Irving. Obviously, Irving is our priority, but secondarily, you know, we're human beings and we care about people, so we want to make sure that everyone has the best opportunity to be safe. So anyway, roundabout to come back to, I would be in favor of also giving some time, and if you have a number that you'd want to put to that, is it 30 days, is it 45, 60 days, something in that window?
I'm
where
thinking
we
within
would-
that window, certainly, I believe that the joint committee meets again in August. I don't believe they meet in July. So I will certainly reach out and let them know that this needs to be on the agenda. But I believe that they're in August meeting, just in full transparency.
Thank you. That would be my addition to that, is working on a amended draft concurrently, because I would rather not wait longer at that point
No, I won't.
unnecessarily, but also to give like one more opportunity if the supervisor committee wanted to pursue or take some other action. I would defer to letting them. That's why we asked them to in the first place. So I think depending on what that response was, that's where I would want to lean anyway, and then just have this as a if needed. So. And at the end of the day, it's been written, it's a document, it's in the public record. It's out there now, right? We haven't sent it, but that doesn't mean the concerns aren't voiced and aren't out there. So I guess my ask is, would you be open to, I guess what I would propose is revisiting late August, 1st of September, both any follow-up response, or sooner if we get one from the supervisory committee, and an adjusted draft if you were willing. You offered to work on a different revision.
If I wasn't willing, I wouldn't have offered.
Fair, fair.
And I think it's only fair to Shannon, since you used your first name, give her an opportunity to do the work that she's asked the opportunity to do.
It's fine.
Good.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for being willing to
Thank you.
and interested in. And,
Thank you.
if there's any updates, obviously you know how to get a hold of us now.
I
So
absolutely will.
let us know, and if you need any support from us,
Perfect.
we're all here. So
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks
you.
again.
thank you. Thank you for coming. Review of the police department policy draft, traffic control personnel, fourth read. Chief, welcome.
There should be a red line copy in your in your packets. I believe I went back through the minutes from your last meeting. I believe I've captured all of the changes that you asked for.
I didn't have any concerns with it. We just wanted to see a cleaner copy with all the changes. Or at least I did.
Any questions, Jim?
And
Or questions?
I only read through it once earlier today. I don't recall having any concerns about the red line draft that was in front of us.
Would one of you like to make a motion to adopt?
Sure. Make a motion to adopt the Erving Police Department Policy and Procedure Number 7.06, Erving Employee Traffic Control Personnel, with the effective date of July 8th, 2024, as written.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Chief, for working on that.
Brian put a lot of work into it too, so thank you, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So we'll ensure that all acting and future are up to speed, and you will be taking that on. Okay, thank you. Review of the patrol officer position recommendation.
I think it's cadet, right?
Correct.
I thought you said patrol officer.
Recommendation.
Oh, I jumped to the
You
cadet.
jump to the policy. I mean, we can go to another policy first if you want, but
Now let's do the.
at least in
recommendation.
our order, it was the in between. So
It's late. I would
I
like
know.
to just add, in speaking with Selectman Loin, down there, the second to the last paragraph, I think it's the third sentence, it says, in June of 2022, Mitchell completed the Bridge Academy. That should say in June of 2024. So just recently. And if I could just also add, I believe with your guys' original packet, I provided you with the Massachusetts Post Commission notice of conditional certification. I was confused on why Mitchell was receiving a conditional certification because he had met all his requirements. And so I reached out to MPTC just before the holiday weekend, and then I heard back from them late Friday, reached out to them first thing today, and they have contacted Post and have made that correction. It should never have been offered a conditional. He should have been offered a certification from Post. So he has received the certification from Post.
fully.
Fully. And I can provide you guys with a copy of that if need be.
Jake, before we get into a discussion
Yes, sir.
related to the candidate,
Mhm.
I'm going to recuse myself from that, just related to the candidate. So I want to make sure that I step aside for that and allow you two to discuss that. If I need to come in as a tiebreaker, I will.
Fair enough.
Did you capture that? 927? Thank you.
Okay.
So, worked with this committee now for quite some time. It's been a very rewarding experience to get to know some other community members, and through this process, vet a few candidates. I'm familiar with this candidate from past work. He was employed in a neighboring town prior to my retirement. He met with the committee, gave what I thought were, some solid answers, provided some context to his passion for working in this profession and specifically for this town. With his certifications now being complete, I was compelled to move that recommendation to Chief Holst. Chief has come to us with his follow-up recommendation, and I see no reason to go in any other direction at this point than to stay consistent with my recommendation, as well as Chief's coming forward to us.
And I did have a very candid conversation with Mr. Waldron about a lot of stuff. And I don't want to get into it because it was between he and I, but he did reassure me that he does really enjoy working here for the town of Erving. I'm not gonna sit here and make any guarantees, but I'm confident that he's gonna stick around for some time. And part of my process was also verifying that he would pass the post recertification. So even if we had to recertify him with post prior to him even getting his certification, as all officers had to do. So prior to him coming to me by the recommendation of the committee, we had already submit a background investigation on him, and there was no concerns with that. So when he came to me, it wasn't really a background investigation, it was more just a very candid conversation. And I would just like to point out as well, I'm very appreciative of the work that Town Administrator Smith, Selectman Jim Loyne, Deborah Smith, Mackenzie Bailey, and Laura Gordon did. I mean, it was, I want to say it was close to a year. 8 months, 9 months anyways, probably, so. I think it went longer than they anticipated, but there was many long nights, I'm sure. And everybody has a busy, full schedule, so I'm very appreciative of their work.
Well, being I was here when he was here, employed and working nearly full-time and then some, before he, went back to a private sector and part-time. It sounds like some of the things that might concern me about, hiring him back on full-time have been discussed and addressed, and the screening committee, I know they've put in lots of hours, like you said, and reviewed lots of candidates, so have tried to only recommend what they feel would be the best, candidates for the town that meet the qualifications. So I don't see a need to hold an interview with Mitch Waldron, given, the recommendations, your recommendation, my knowledge of him already. So I don't see any concerns with what was presented or with bringing him on.
And if I could, I would just like to add that there at the bottom, I did recommend him for that step 2, and my reasoning behind that is that, he has worked with us since 2001. He has completed all the required training. He's been here longer than a few of our other employees, and I'm not saying that, he's got the experience over, somebody like Officer Gordon. And we really have an advantage there with not having to do the training, learning the town, learning the way we do our system and stuff like that. He's currently at step 2 as a part-timer, and so that was kind of my justification for bringing him in at that P2 step 2, and that would leave him, or that would put him equal to Officer Garvey and Officer Bryant.
Any concerns with that, Jim?
Yeah, I understand the rationale, and it makes sense to me.
I do too. There had been a question earlier about the 1 year. Because he was part-time before, we still have the 1 year clause, right, per MGL, right?
He didn't complete it.
Because he didn't, right, because he didn't serve as a full-time for a year prior, so it doesn't fall off, okay. I just know that was in the language, just wanted to make sure.
And I left a blank where we typically include all the pre-employment psychological examination, the physical examination. I didn't know that you would want to require those things again. They were all done at the last hire, but that's your discretion, so.
Chief, any a recommendation either way. I mean, he's been part-time, so I guess any reason to run through those to have a fresher
Yeah,
copy or not?
Other than I think it just slows down the process, and there is a cost to it. It's not an extremely expensive cost. I have told Mitch that he may have to do that, so he's at least preparing to know that he may have to do that. I don't think it's necessary. You know, I know that, you know, myself and Sergeant Pecos, when we received promotions, we did a psychological again, and I believe a physical. I think that, you know, we were taking on an added responsibility and in a much bigger role. He's, although taking on a full-time position, it's really the same work that he does as a part-timer. It'd just be more consistent. And so I don't think that it's necessary, but he is prepared to do it if you folks deem that it's necessary.
When did he leave his 38-hour part-time? Was it 22?
It was 22.
Mid-22. I'm waiting to know. I don't know what you're thinking. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago.
Post requires it to be done. They haven't said that it has to be done every 3 years for the recertification process. Post just says that officers need to have had a psychological examination. So I know there's certain officers that when they came on the job 20 years ago had a psychological, and Post has accepted that as.
Oh, they have? Okay, I was just going to ask you, was there a date on that? And
No.
as long as they had it? Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean Post can't change their mind tomorrow.
Then everybody will be subject to that.
Right.
And Brian, run through that again, psychological, physical, was there a third one?
And then it's usually the background check.
The background check,
Yeah,
we don't
but
need
that's
that.
already been completed.
We know we don't need that.
Yep. Oh. So I know there's an added time, and I know there's an added cost, but I'm also one who dots i's and crosses t's, and while my knowledge of this candidate doesn't give me any cause for concern, I would hate a few years down the road to have this come back and go, why didn't we do that?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Well, and we're not talking a part-time, no disrespect to him, but a part-time who was working 12, 20, 19 hours a week. It was as available for coverage shifts, so it's a little different than someone going from 15 to 30 or 40 hours a week who's been active at that level for a while, so.
We're making an investment long-term here.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I kind of assumed that you guys would maybe lean in that direction. That's why I told them that this is a good possibility, so.
So,
Okay, we'll go ahead and do them both, then we'll do physical and psychological. In terms of start date, obviously I didn't bring that up till we got those covered, because there's a certain amount of time for that. Also don't know when he's available too, so I don't know if you know of any specifics, or if we set a date that's, you know, I don't know, what are we thinking, like, maybe, where am I here?
I don't have my
The
calendar, but I know.
29th or the 5th of August or something as a,
Or sooner.
earlier, yeah.
That's how we've done it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, I don't know which date and timing wise with scheduling some of that stuff. what you
I'm not
guys-
concerned about the pre-employment physical. Most employees are getting in within about 2 weeks.
Okay,
It's the psychologist and making
And
sure.
and I've been pretty, I remember when we did the most recent one, I think it was done in a week and a half, 2 weeks, so.
Right, depending on
so
workload.
He's good about getting the Zoom link out to the candidate and getting that done, and then he gives me instant feedback, and then
and then the final?
and with a recommendation, and then we'll get a final.
Right.
Well, why don't we shoot for the 29th? That's 3 weeks out,
July
if
29th?
that makes sense, and then if.
Or sooner.
Or sooner.
Or sooner, right,
Yeah.
or sooner, and should be Should be sufficient. Okay.
We will work on that tomorrow, getting those scheduled. TA, I'm assuming I can go ahead and do the AEIOU? Get it scheduled?
Please.
Okay.
Do you need a formal motion?
I do. Now that we've filled in all the blanks.
Yes, okay,
Please.
so, let me see if I can put all the pieces together in a coherent way. And I will make a motion to appoint Mitchell Waldron as a full-time benefited patrol officer in accordance with MGL Chapter 41, Section 133, for a term of 1 year, pending successful completion of a pre-employment medical and psychological evaluation with certification by the Mass Peace Officers Standard and Training Commission at a step rate of P2, Step 2, hourly rate of $28.34 per hour in accordance with the NEPBA Local 121 Collective Bargaining Agreement and with a start date on or before July 29th of 2024.
I will second. Did we miss anything? Make you be the keeper of that.
I was following.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So you're going to take care of, I'll get
take-
the notes out to the candidate, but you'll take care of arranging the 2 evaluations?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
I can reach out to the candidate too.
Sure, I'm going to give him a formal.
A formal, right.
But please reach out to him, of course.
You let him know. I'm sure he's, well, either watching or waiting.
He's probably
A
watching.
little bit of both. I would be.
Thank you very much. And
I'm gonna
again, thank you to
rejoin
the
at
committee.
9:41, 9:42, sorry.
Scott is
Welcome back.
Rejoining at 9:42. How was
Yeah.
your time off?
It was
No,
great. It was great.
Review of the community services cadet position description draft. So it's a first read, and I know it's already late, so we don't have to go deep into it. But if there's anything that you all had already seen or wanted to ask about or discuss, please.
Given the time, we'll bring it back for second read. I don't have any concerns that were glaring.
And just to let you all know, Chief's already receiving interest from people in the community about the position.
Absolutely.
And we already have an application or 2 pending. I'm sure they want to see the full job description, but
Gotcha.
but there's interest, so that's good to hear.
Okay. I would expect we would want to do a screening again. Do we want to see if the screening committee wants to continue? I mean, the end goal is the same, right? You get,
Could I just add to that? I would like to be on that. I found it to be very frustrating that I wasn't involved in the process.
Is there any potential conflict where, or you, because this is a cadet position, your second interview and post-exam?
We're still going to do that. We'll still make, I mean, we don't want to make sure, we don't want to hire somebody who's not going to pass the post requirements. Because the ultimate goal is to get this person to the level of a patrol officer.
but that was that not the reason you were not on the screening?
Correct. I was going to say
So we
that,
kept them separate because of that requirement?
We kept them separate because I had to do an interview anyway, so I was going to meet the candidate. But where I found that I was frustrated was a lot of things were happening in executive session which I couldn't know about, which I understand why I can't know about it, but I want to know about it, and it's my department, and I should know about it. I should. I mean, I think it's rare that department heads don't sit on their hiring committees. And I always have in the past, and we tried this, and it didn't work for me personally. I want to be involved in the process. I would imagine that there's, I mean, I know I got pulled in from a cemetery meeting to come in and talk to the committee at one occasion, and I'm sure that there was other times when they're like, well, what would the chief say? Or Brian would come back and say, it just seems to be cleaner and easier. I don't have to be part of the decision-making, but I want to be involved in having input and say into, and I believe it would speed the process up. I think that there was times that the process could have been speeded up. I could have spoke to certain things maybe, that Brian had come back to me and then they had to schedule another meeting, and I think that I could have spoke to it quicker, sooner, and had resolution, that night.
I appreciate your honesty and candor. I thought that to be a very short question. Given it is not, I would ask if either of you who served on it would like to think about that and maybe provide some feedback, because now I'm just curious if you would agree from a perspective of a committee member in terms of would it have been more efficient if Chief had been present or not. If you're willing to, at the next meeting, just give that feedback.
Okay.
We obviously don't need to dissolve, create, or decide this till we have a policy and we're ready
Right.
to go out for a cadet. So just give me some time to think about it, and all of us a little time, because I hadn't contemplated those pieces. And so just for clarity, you said you would also then still do a separate interview after for whatever candidate was recommended?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, part of the process would be to give them their post questionnaire or whatever post. We've never hired, the town has never hired somebody who's not certified as a police officer. So it will be a learning process for all of us to go through this, because we're hiring somebody that hasn't been vetted out by post, where we all were vetted out by post. A through H's were vetted out, and so on. So we're hiring somebody who's had no vetting through post, and I've never looked into it because I've never had to do that process. But it is a different process.
Well, and even prior, we're usually part-time certified, and that was pre-post. And
Right,
so there was already
exactly.
some stuff done. We weren't starting from scratch, literally,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Where we are now.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair question. All right. Thank you.
Because they come out of the academy already with their post certification. So they have to go into the academy already approved by post.
Right. Different days, different times.
Right.
Okay. Fair enough. Good on that for tonight? All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
gentlemen.
Thank you, Chief.
Carried to the 22nd?
Carry on the position description, yes, please.
Okay.
And just kind of calling it out again, we reviewed the citizen petition kind of during the capital discussion because it was very relevant.
Correct.
My understanding is that doesn't dictate a timeline for holding the meeting because it didn't meet that burden of signatures, but it does require at the next.
Correct.
So whenever we schedule, and I know that needs to be probably a 22nd 22nd discussion is about the STM, because we have town code and others.
I will start to
Couple
draft.
items that we needed to
I'll start drafting the warrant.
put out there. Okay. Let's see.
Do you want to go back up to north?
Yeah, where is it? Am I
It's
missing
just,
it?
it's just above the, two
11.
above the citizens petition.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Oh, I crossed it off.
Yeah.
Guess I was getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Discussion regarding North Street repaving procurement. Come on up, Glenn, thank you.
Thanks for sticking it out.
Yeah. He missed this little time off from dealing with this and us. Get you right back in the groove.
Perfect, thank you.
So we have your info here. I know there's been a lot of concerns about North Streets.
There is, in the process that was done about 10 years ago now. It was a hot-in-place reclaiming. I'm sure you all remembered it. There was a bunch of tractor-trailer type length machines that blew fire, run by propane onto it. It actually melted the asphalt, reliquefied it, they scarified it, rolled it, and then put 1.5 inches of blacktop back over it. It did not work well on that road for longevity, like if a milling and overlay was done. It was a process that was already procured when I was put into the position to oversee the highway department. And this, unfortunately, this is what we are left with the product. I'm sure most of you have driven up and over North Street in the last year, and it's just has delaminated really bad in multiple sections, and it's gonna keep happening. Thomas is still here with us. He can tell you we have put down multiple ton of cold patch through the winter times. Didn't stick. We have patched them multiple times already in the spring and the summer, and it doesn't stick. You get a little bit of rain and it pops them right back out. So we went out and marked them and had a preliminary cost on doing just the areas that needed to be done for milling and overlaying. And it came in at a very high price because the production was very low. So the more production that you give these companies, the better price that you get for quantities, the tonnage applied and milling to come out. So we went back over it again. We broadened the scope a little bit further. Last week I went around with Brian and we made the scope a little bit bigger. Within hopes that we've probably gonna get enough production to get a lot better price to get more done for the money. We have about $490,000, I believe it was in chapter 90.
Right.
Hoping to use about 200,000. We're hoping to get approved to use about 200,000 in this, for this project.
I just have one.
Before winter.
I have a simple question. What's the mileage distance from section 1 to section 7, roughly?
The end of section 7 is the town line.
Okay,
The start of section 1 is the second house on North Street.
so it's the entirety of North Street?
Right.
I
It
drove
should
them
be.
last few days and looked at the markers because
Okay.
It absolutely should be the entirety of North Street be done. But we just don't have the money for that in the chapter 90 or town appropriations to do that. In the lower side of North Street, we actually started talking complete streets program, to be done through there with the Church Street Bridge or shortly afterwards to try to help there. So the patch that needs to be done on the lower side of North Street is a big delaminating issue also. So that's why that one is put in there for now.
And Glenn and I, just as a quick sidebar, because he mentioned it, Glenn and I have met with an engineer about a complete streets proposal for Church and Lower North. And we should have that back next week if you have time to review at your July 22nd meeting. So we're trying to make some inroads on that project as well.
Did we get it from 2 engineers?
We've asked 2 engineers. Will I get a response from 2 engineers? That I don't know.
Fair point.
So, all right, whatever. I know it's not Bill, who we normally deal with on a lot of these projects, who handles complete street level projects, even though he's done a few with us, right? That's not his area primarily, so.
Correct.
I know Weston wasn't responding. We had talked to another engineer. Which one are we
correct.
anticipating?
We believe Green International will have
Okay,
a response
thank
to
you.
us.
That's maybe my
Sorry.
more pointed question.
Yes.
Who are we expecting it from?
Green International.
Okay, thank you. It's still open to Weston. We haven't heard.
Sure, we just haven't heard back.
Right.
But they're doing the Route 2 project, so he's already very familiar with the area.
Green.
Green is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just for clarity.
Yeah.
Green.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's already very familiar with the project, the turning radiuses, the North Street issues, the Church Street issues, all of that downtown issue,
Right.
which is a bonus to us.
And MassDOT has already weighed in, because if we apply to complete streets, it would be MassDOT funding that we would be seeking. They wanted to make sure there would not be a conflict, and MassDOT is not concerned. If they were to be engaged on this project by the town and they were working on Route 2, there's no concern.
Knowing last time we got some work done at the same time by the same, I guess it was the contractor, but there was some
Right.
serious economy there.
There was a great economy of
So,
scale.
Yeah,
be interesting, because we know they're not doing that tomorrow.
Right.
They're working on it, but it's not happening tomorrow, so
Correct.
interesting if North might be timely.
Right.
And speed bumps and speed issues, all this stuff was all stuff that Green is familiar with from how it outflows into Route 2, right? So,
Exactly.
interesting.
I
Go
did
ahead.
have one, I just have
You
one
had my
question for
question.
context, when we're talking about asking for funding and getting this approved. do you have, like a probable cost if we were to do a mill and resurface of the entirety?
So we can do it that way, so we're gonna request a mandatory site walk too, because this is not a point A to point B
Correct.
finish. So they're gonna have to drive the whole road, stop at the sections that we already have pre-marked. And it may come down to, not necessarily starting at the section 1, at the lower section.
Right,
But
yeah.
starting from section 2.
Right, if section 1 could get folded into, say, a complete streets or something, whatever makes sense. I was just for cost comparison, if a company, quoting that says, if I have to stop and start and do new cut lines over and over again versus a cut in the beginning, a cut at the end, I mill the whole thing and I repave the whole thing, here's the two cost comparisons. Do what you want, it's your
So
bid.
that's why we went back out, remarked it, and made it a little bit bigger, because I rode with an estimator from the contractor, and he says, if you can find a way to connect a lot of these sections to make them bigger sections, that's when you get your production discount, because you're giving them more production.
Right,
They're bringing out a multi-million-dollar machine to
Sure.
do 500 feet, where now we're up to like almost 3,400 feet. Some of it are full-width lanes.
Well,
Some
that
of
was-
them are single.
That's not the question, whether or not there's a preference for doing full width or doing a single lane.
right,
Some stretches it made sense to propose a single lane as we have, but there were other moments where you could see one lane was severely potholed, but you could see delamination happening in the second lane. And
Right.
so it's just a matter of time.
It is, and the bonus of doing, the benefit and bonus of doing a full width is you have 2 joints now instead of 3. Where if you do just a single lane, now you have a whole center joint and you have a start and stop joint.
right.
So if you're just doing, across the whole width of it, you got start, stop, and stop joints.
No, I guess that was that was the precipice for my question is, we may get to a point where, sure, it's going to be more expensive. If you were to say section 2 through section 7, what's the cost of doing it, all of it, not each section, the entirety of the road? What does that cost if you were to mill it and do it? But that can be, so if it's so high that the residents say, we're not paying for that right now, we can't. Or conversely, you might have enough residents that say, let's find the extra funding source above and beyond the, what was proposed as, say, a $200,000 for a partial fix. What's the delta? What's the difference if we were to do the entire street and get another 15 years out of it, 20 years, as opposed to several when we're just doing sections and watching those sections in between delaminate and pothole?
Well, in some of the sections that we actually skipped over was around the Swamp Road Bridge area. Knowing that that's gonna be a reconstructed area,
be its
there's gonna
own
be wall
project.
construction in there
Right.
also, which
Okay.
there's spots in there that do need to be done. But it could be done on a smaller scale with a different machine and a different contractor probably,
And
if
once
we
we
would
get,
skip that area.
and once we get to that project, we're gonna have to do all the approaches in, so that stretch of North Street can be incorporated into that project.
All right, so I guess that changes my question then. Do you feel there's any value in expanding this even more to bridge those gaps between those sections? Or are you very comfortable with the pieces that you left off because of future work that is inevitable?
The only part that I would feel comfortable taking out is that Swamp Road area, knowing that that's a future part, in this lower section of North Street. If we could do everything that's in between those areas,
Okay, maybe that answered. It didn't sound like it at first, but that's.
No, it
Okay.
did. So, when we're getting a cost estimate for that, it would be nice to see what this proposal is. But then also, let's omit section 1, grab section 2. I'm assuming Swamp Road is somewhere around section 3,
yeah, it's somewhere.
3 or
above
4,
that, I think,
somewhere in
yeah.
there. But keeping that area left off, but then after that section, running all the way to the town line. Yeah. And what does that look like?
You want this all for your next meeting?
I mean, if it's not going to be cost prohibitive to get somebody to give us a quote like that, or at least
I'm sure I could get the same gentleman back out to do it, and
We need an estimator out.
it'll give us an idea
Just a
before the
ballpark.
IFP goes out.
yeah.
Okay.
but we're gonna end up with a piecemeal and maybe a 7-section quote, and
Down
you're
to 2.
saying maybe down to a 2 or 3-section quote.
Correct.
Yes.
If we do a lower and 2 lower sections before the bridge and then, or Swamp Road Bridge and then potentially swamp to the line.
Yes.
That's what we're
Yeah.
And you
proposing.
can structure them like bid alternates. So you could set your priority as base bid, and you could.
You're way too far down in the path.
No,
We're not
no, I'm
even
just
close.
saying, there's a couple different strategies.
Sure.
Knowing
But we need
that
to
paving
understand the
season
costs
ends by November 1st.
Yeah.
We've got a window.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, because you get the economy of scales, if they were to, I want to know what the difference would be if we were to just fill all the gaps outside of the 2 areas that we know
Yep.
are 99% sure that we're going to have to pull those into a larger project anyways with the 2 bridges. If we were to do the rest of the road as one bid and then the presentation here of those sections as, as presented. I know every time you have to bring out the cutter to make sure you get a straight cut across and so you can pave up to it, it's just another added expense.
Right.
And if you can lessen the number of times you're doing that, there may be a balancing where the increase is not as much as we think.
Yeah, happy to do that. I can reach out to him tomorrow morning.
But on this, do you want to do single lane anywhere? It seems
No.
like that's not a great idea to me.
And yeah, we
So-
discussed that out there.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a question here, right? Of,
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know driving it, there were some sections where they were staggered, and I was like, "Are we really doing single there, or or staggered start and stuff?" And not walking it with you, right? Which I knew I could call you, but I knew we were talking about tonight. So I think we're saying all sections should be full width.
Full width.
That being said, so one of the questions I had is, knowing the experience we've had from our residents in the Erving Center area with the current project and how pleased they were with the inconveniences they experienced, I am fully in favor of a full width job. Are there communications or other type of measures we can take to offset? Because if, I'm assuming you're doing a full length and you've got a hot pavement, that road is impassable.
So it was already done. Like I say, when this process was done in 2014,
Yep.
I think there was 3 officers involved because this was like a freight train. I think there was like 3 or 4 of those 53-foot
Yep,
tractors
yep.
and trailers.
I was-
Going up through. There was rollers, so it's a very long stretch on it. We work very good with the town of Northfield when they're doing road projects. That we close our sign to the people that read the signs, and they would do the same thing on their side. and send
So
over
your
something out.
2014 project, there was an actual formal complaint lodged against yours truly, one of the few in my career, because somebody didn't read the sign, and it was my fault. Okay, sarcasm aside, trying to be respectful of our neighbors, and our residents, and their concerns. They're going to be inconvenienced.
Absolutely.
And there's going to have to be some way that we provide appropriate notifications, whether notifications were done by MassDOT on timing or schedule or anything else, we're going to have to be aware of that and just do better.
Well, it wouldn't,
and
it
we
wouldn't be
are-
a road closure, it
Full
would just
width
be a
is
one
going to be
lane.
one lane up and one way back,
Yeah,
right?
you'd still-
they do 1 lane at a time.
Yeah, you'd
It's not
still
both
have-
lanes at the same
not
time.
gonna
You would never
fully-
close the road, it would still be just one lane at a time.
Yeah, it'd be 1 lane alternating.
Yeah.
Local only.
And
And they would just move that up as it's set and then turn around and come back the other way.
Yep.
And not that we can anticipate every potential delay. Delays do happen on projects, even to the best of your ability to control. But we, for years now, have been sending out notices to residents on affected roads in advance of construction, letting them know who the contractor is, who to contact if there's any questions, when the anticipated start date is, so that residents have all the base information. So I can't speak to what MassDOT does, but that's how we've been handling those projects. And I think it helps cut down on the frustrations and the concerns that people have. Gives them a person to know who to contact and ask questions of.
And we got 2 of the electronic messaging boards.
Yep.
That we put out way ahead of time also.
And we usually walk I don't know how you walk, I mean, we could walk all of North Street, but we've typically also offered site walks with residents if they want to understand the scope of the project, so I don't know why we wouldn't do it on this as well.
Okay. So you said you're guessing about 200,000 for this?
So the first estimate that came out in the smaller sections was around 83,000. I'm gonna say probably for, I wouldn't even wanna guess now, probably like 600 feet. Let's say 600 feet. But because the wood is so low, the costs are so high per cubic yard of milling and then per ton for paving. So the more those lengths go up, and because we have to do a 2-inch. Typically, a mill and overlay on our town roads are only 1.5 inches. But because this is delaminated down to the 2-inch depth and a little more in some areas, it has to be a 2-inch depth minimum. So that's already gonna increase the production for them. So, like I say, we were hoping to stay around 200 because there's other monies that have to come out of that chapter 90. You know, the rest of Maple Ave has to come out of that. I believe there's some of that, and
Yeah, it's about 40-ish thousand that
what
we have
else
to
was
pay.
there? We had something else.
Well, on the horizon, we have Ridge Road that
Right.
needs to be redone, and we have a couple other problem spots in town that we're monitoring, so.
Yeah.
And that was my question, what other future projects do we need to?
Ridge Road would be the next one. Highland Ave, we're hoping maybe Highland Ave can be tied into maybe this complete streets, you know, part of that also. But that's
Yeah.
another road.
Sem at some point, and Poplar Mountain still needs to be done.
Yep.
Okay, that answers my
But if we
question.
have an opportunity and it falls within our budget to do most of North Street, then I would be very willing to do that.
And we're also proposing to not use engineering on this, and just conduct the procurement ourselves.
Correct.
We're not
It's a
adding
mill and
complete
overlay.
And I was gonna say, that's
streets,
because
Oh,
it's just a
and
mill and overlay, it's
We're
not
not
a,
adjusting structures,
Right.
we're,
Right. Because the other part, you asked the question about the full length, and part of me is like, the full complete streets, but that's
no.
so much larger.
It is.
And we'll have to
It-
do it in segments.
Correct.
So
Right.
the reality is there's a lower segment where that focus needs to be,
Yep.
and
right,
the
So-
mid and upper segments can be later.
right.
If,
Just
you
for
know,
my own curiosity, from around the closed-off bridge at Swamp, we're about a mile to the town line,
Oh,
roughly?
probably a little more than that.
a little more than that?
Mile and a half, almost two.
Mile and a half, okay,
Yeah.
all right. I was just trying to venture a guess.
I don't know. I've been up and down it many, many times and I never look down at the other.
Yeah, nor do I, that's why I was asking.
Jake's gonna tell you right now. He's
Are your,
looking it up.
are your field workers still out there? Can you?
You're gonna drop it, you're gonna drop.
Yeah, you're right.
You're gonna drop
Well, I already
spin.
did the whole thing with 2.5 because I was curious. 1/6.
1/6 from Swamp Road?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go all the way up to Jacksbrook, but if I moved it up to Jacksbrook.
Yeah,
it's
no, that's
probably-
fine.
But in that,
Yeah.
1/4.
Okay, fair enough.
But, yeah, I guess certainly I'll reach out to him tomorrow and see if he can come out, ride it and measure those two areas. And at least we have another number for you before we put it out.
You mentioned Jacksbrook. I hate to continue the discussion, but are there any culverts in the culvert list that are in the area that we're paving that we should be at least aware of
Not
that
on
were
North
high
Street.
priority? No?
No.
Okay.
The bridge or the large box culvert for Jacks Brook is inspected every 2 years, and it's in decent shape right now. And there was one other culvert up by the town line that had sustained some not damage, but debris from
Debris,
that
yeah,
storm, and
clogging.
it's all been
Yeah,
repaired.
it's all been prepared, yeah.
Okay.
Taken out.
I'm just remembering that lengthy
Yes.
FERCog list and all the work that we
Yes,
did, and like, we don't always get an opportunity to get back to it, but if we're gonna be working, let's make sure we're not missing something. Okay. You have enough
Absolutely.
to be dangerous?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Always.
Excellent.
22nd? So back on the 22nd, we'll have some.
You'll have it?
Some more numbers.
By then? Yep.
Yep.
Let's
In the
do it.
meantime, I'm gonna draft, knowing that you're okay with us doing this
Yeah.
ourselves, I'm gonna draft the rest of the procurement, and then what we're gonna do is just whatever scope of work you select is what's gonna get planted inside the document.
Thank you.
We'll be prepared to drop it in and decide if there's alternates or it's just this,
Right,
Got it.
Yep.
All right.
that night.
excellent.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all very much. That it?
I think so, unless you
Yeah.
got something else for us.
Good night.
Run.
You as well. Thank you. All right. So I don't miss things any else, I think. I'm gonna, from the top down, and make sure, we're gonna go back and do meeting minutes,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
so that I don't skip those, if they're here. Jump to those in my other tabs here. So review the meeting minutes. Do you want to take them all together, or you want us to do them separately, guys? We'll do them together. Meeting minutes of March 18th, March 25th, and June 24th, 2024.
I think it's June 28th.
Yeah, but they're actually June 24th.
They are June 24th?
Yeah, there's a typo on the.
There's a
agenda.
typo.
There is a typo on the agenda. There's not a typo on the draft.
Correct.
That's a motion? All right, I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes from March 18th, 2024, March 25th, 2024, and June 24th, 2024, as written.
I will second that motion.
Any discussion?
None.
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Review and approval of agreement with the Franklin County Solid Waste Management District for household hazardous waste collection.
It's the same agreement that we do every year. And it's the same budget that we use every year. And it has so far proven to meet the needs of the residents who have used the program.
This is the $1,000 one?
Correct.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
No.
None. I guess I should get on the right document if I'm going to do a word search to find it. Sorry, it's getting late.
Section 14 of the original packet.
We have never come close to our budget, so we should be fine.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it was $800 last year.
Oh,
So
high?
we're
Okay.
still
I didn't even
capacity.
think it was that high.
I was going to say, I'm surprised we
I thought it
actually
was
got
like
that
5 or
high.
6, but either way, okay. Excuse me.
And all of these agreements are next to you for signature.
Make a motion to approve the agreement with the Franklin County Solid Waste Management District and the town of Erving for, make sure I'm getting the wording correct, hazardous waste collection?
I think that works.
Household, but yeah, but you
Yeah.
got it. So that's
Household
sufficient.
hazardous waste collection.
I will second that. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Review and approval of agreement with the Franklin County Solid Waste Management District for the hauling and disposal of solid waste, recyclables, bulky waste, and scrap metal.
That's a wordy one.
This is the same agreement that we do every year, but in totality, what this really means is Jan services are available to us for all of the pickup of e-waste, the scrap metal, the appliances, things that we've done in the past at the transfer station, or the former transfer station, but helps us with our recycling and our solid waste contracts and the negotiation and all that
Yes,
work,
yes.
the monitoring of that.
Right. She has at times, we've utilized her services. and
Absolutely,
it's
we
been very
utilized it the
helpful
last
to-
time we
We were
contracted with
struggling a lot
Casella.
with, yeah, with
Yep.
our numbers
Absolutely.
and things, and it really helped a lot. So.
Yep,
Absolutely.
valuable.
Very.
You good for one?
I am.
It's a long one.
Go for
Because I'm
it.
going to get all the words in there. Do you need anything particular on this, or just recycling and?
Yeah, no, as long as we understand what the agreement is of the three.
I make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding between the Franklin County Solid Waste Management District and the town of Erving regarding hauling recyclables and disposal of solid waste, bulky waste, scrap metal, and appliances.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Review and
you.
approval of agreement with Franklin County Solid Waste Management District for the hauling and disposal of sludge.
This is the rates.
And this is because they hold that contract for Pete,
Yep.
and there's an admin cost for that hauling.
Again, other than dates, nothing has changed, correct?
Correct. I mean, obviously, the rates are different
Yeah.
just because of the new procurement, but
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, I didn't see anything different in the actual language.
I didn't either.
Make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding by and between the Franklin County Solid Waste Management District and the town of Erving regarding hauling and disposal of sludge.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Jim? Review and issuance of the first and second water commitments for FY '25.
Make a motion to approve the first water commitment fiscal year 2025 in the amount of, I just had it, and now I don't. $720.00.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And make a motion to approve the second water commitment fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $47.83.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Those are also next to you.
We'll pass over the review of surplus equipment,
Okay.
the IT department, get there. For tonight. Did I miss anything else on the agenda?
No,
You hit it all.
We jumped around, but I think I got them all.
you did.
All right. We've already got a decent list for the 22nd queued up. We'll make sure that we have availability for the joint, and it'll look similar to tonight. Half the things are back on, including the public hearing. And the
all
joint
good.
session and a lot of the same topics. We'll also have STM draft.
Yes.
And we've already discussed the town code presentation stuff, so I think we're
Correct.
ready, hopefully,
Yep.
to look at that.
We have another information session for the public this Wednesday.
Did we already hold one?
We already did one a week and a half ago.
I know you gave me the dates and I
Yep.
couldn't make them, so, or couldn't make the last one. Good turnout?
There were 2 residents that joined us.
Okay.
Yep.
There was turnout.
There was tonight. Correct.
Gotcha. All right. Anything else that you guys have for next meeting? Okay. Actually, do you want scheduling beyond that? I know you had some August stuff. I have some August stuff now too, so
Yeah,
I will not be here for the 5th. So I can't do August 5th. I have no problem. You guys can meet without me, but I
Yeah.
don't know if that works for you.
I am around on the 5th. I'm not around on the 19th.
The holiday is the 2nd.
The holiday is what?
Is 9/2.
Labor Day.
Oh, yeah. So then do we want to just shift it and do the 12th and the 26th?
Yeah, I was just wondering, should we just move, at least one of those for one of us?
And
Or we
that
can move them
gets us,
both?
yeah, because it just allows, Jim, I don't know if you have anything in August where you're out of town?
Nothing yet. We might do a quick overnight to somewhere other than here, but right now there's nothing planned. We just had one, so.
All right, and knowing we're probably going to be looking at fitting this team in there somewhere too, so.
Right.
Although it may be September by then. Well, let's do that then. We'll plan to go 22nd to the 12th,
Okay.
unless by the 22nd we determine we need to fit something in between or whatever, we'll adjust then, but
Okay.
for now, does that work
Yep.
Yeah.
for everyone?
Update the
Okay.
calendars.
So, we'll 22nd, 12th of August, 26th August, and then we'll be into second week September.
Got it.
Yeah. We are shifting that, so just a reminder that for the vendor warrants, when we
Yes,
get into
they will.
August, because those will be on our off weeks.
Yep.
And I know I usually try to
Make
get
sure
the
to get
payroll
over to the-
one,
Yep.
even if you guys can't, on the off weeks, but it'll switch, so just a reminder. Yes, did you have something?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. All right. With that, make a motion to adjourn at 10:19.
Executive session.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah. I knew that 5 minutes ago. Thank
Yeah.
you for reminding me. With that, I'll move that we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. I do so declare. We will not return to regular session. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, roll call. Brian, will you call the roll?
Chairman Smith,
Aye.
Selectman Basarash,
Aye.
Selectman Lloyd.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.